Dear colleagues, just good afternoon. Just to highlight that the start is at 2:15. So at 2:15 we will be starting. Just to let you know once again.
Okay, thank you. Just for an audio check, can you hear me? Okay, please.
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bahodir aka. Можно начинать, да?
Камила.
Здрасте, можно начинать?
Я сейчас жду последний сигнал от наших коллег. Добрый день, уважаемые участники. У нас готовность номер 1. Хочу обратить ваше внимание на то, что для вас организован синхронный перевод с русского на английский и с английского на русский. Внизу вашего экрана вы увидите иконку глобуса. Нужно просто нажать на него и выбрать нужный вам язык. Спасибо большое. Ждем сигнала для начала. Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli tadbir qatnashchilari. Sizlarni O'zbekistonda raqamlashtirish salohiyatini COVID-19 pandemiyasi fonida ochish mavzusidagi xalq ko'rib turganimizdan nihoyatda xursandmiz. Mana ismim Bahodir Ayupov, ushbu tadbirimizning birinchi yarmida moderatorlik qilib sizlarni xizmatingizda bo'lamiz. Добрый день, дамы и господа. Мы очень рады видеть вас вокруг нашего международного онлайн круглого стола. Раскрытие потенциала цифровизации в Узбекистане на фоне COVID-19. Меня зовут Бахадир Аюпов. Я буду сегодня весь к вашим услугам в качестве модератора в первой половине данного мероприятия. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all. We are delighted to see you around our international roundtable discussion, unlocking the potential of digitalization of Uzbekistan amidst a global health and socio-economic crisis. My name is Bahodir Ayupov. I will be at your service today, moderating the first half of this event. Итак, говорится, человек предполагает, Бог располагает. Это высказывание, пожалуй, наиболее применимо к тому, что произошло с человечеством в этом году. Это явный пример тому, насколько хрупка и уязвима та гармония, в которой мы все это время жили. И явный пример тому, как невидимый враг микроскопического масштаба может превратиться в реальную угрозу нашей цивилизации. И мероприятия, подобные сегодняшним, можно...
Уважаемый Бахадир Ака, вы можете тоже выбрать канал русский, выберите, пожалуйста. потому что сейчас из-за этого проблема с переводчиками произошла.
Хорошо.
Выберите, и только в него надо будет говорить, и тогда все остальные будут слышать только нужные.
Переводом понятно.
Да,
Понятно.
спасибо.
Все, я выбрал русский. Я продолжу. Мероприятия, подобные сегодняшней, можно сравнить с нашими первыми шагами перегруппировки, оценки и переосмысления того, где мы сейчас оказались, и пересмотра наших планов на будущее с учетом нашего реального потенциала, который был выявлен, в частности, и в условиях данной пандемии. И данное мероприятие сегодня позволит нам ответить на многие вопросы, которые висят неотвеченными. Пользуясь случаем, я бы хотел поблагодарить наших организаторов. Это Министерство по развитию информационных технологий и коммуникаций Республики Узбекистан, Программа развития ООН и Всемирный банк. Также благодарность выражаем нашим партнерам. Это Кабинет министров Республики Узбекистан, Министерство здравоохранения, дирекция IT-парк Узбекистан и университет Амити. Итак, дамы и господа, наша встреча сегодня состоит из двух основных тематических сессий. До 4 часов мы с вами будем обсуждать тему «Цифровое развитие в Узбекистане. Текущий прогресс и дальнейшее видение». И с 4 до 6 вечера мы послушаем выступление вокруг темы «Цифровой ответ на COVID-19. Уроки из Узбекистана и зарубежный опыт». После каждой сессии у нас будут сессии вопросов и ответов, в которых у всех будет возможность задать вопросы нашим выступающим. И завершим нашу встречу обсуждениями итогов и заключительной речью глав организации, собравших нас всех здесь. Напомню, дамы и господа, в нашем мероприятии участвуют представители международных организаций, агентств по содействию развитию, дипломатического корпуса, а также национального правительства, организаций гражданского общества, частного сектора, научных кругов и аналитических центров. Дамы и господа, передаю вступительные речи первому заместителю министра Министерства по развитию информационных технологий и коммуникаций Республики Узбекистан господину Олегу Андреевичу Пекасе. Олег Андреевич.
Thank you, Bahadur. Good afternoon, dear participants of the meetings. Good afternoon, Matilda Dimovska. Good afternoon, Marco Mantavanelli. I'm glad to welcome all of you to our international events on the subject of unlocking the potential of digitalization in Uzbekistan during COVID-19 pandemic, organized jointly with UNDP and the World Bank. As you know, 2020 has been declared the year of development of science, education, and the digital economy. Therefore, the government pays priority attention to the development of the digital economy, the large-scale implementation of digital technology in all sectors of the economic and social spheres. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused tremendous damage of the entire global economy and reveals critical vulnerabilities, the damage from which can only be minimized by expanding the areas of application of digital technology in all spheres of life. To that end, a number of resolutions of the President has been approved, in particular, resolution number 4699 on measuring for the large-scale implementation of the digital economy and e-government, according to which in the period of 2020-2029, it is planned to implement 268 projects in various areas of public administration, business, and economic activity. Resolution number 4642 on measuring for the large-scale implementation of digital technologies in Tashkent City, in which the concept of a digital city implies the mainstreaming of technology in healthcare systems, the field of education, housing of unitary fields, public transport systems, the spheres of environmental protection, development of tourism and trade. Also, the focus in the development of the country's telecommunication infrastructures, the presence of which is the fundamental component of all digital processes. Last year alone, in the course of the development of the telecommunication infrastructure in the Republic, 490,000 broadband access ports were installed, and thus the total number of subscriber access ports reached 2.5 billion. In addition, about 9,000 kilometers of fiber optic lines have been laid in all regions of the countries. And the work on the increase of these indicators is ongoing. I would particularly like to mention the work carries out in the development of the e-government systems, increasing the number of public services provided in electronic format in an automatic mode in order to avoid risk and infection among large numbers of people in public service center. This year, 31 new services have been introduced into the single portal of interactive government services, and the total number of government services provided has reached 208. On the development of e-government, it is planned to implement 37 projects in 2020, 40 projects in 2021, and 27 projects in 2022, of which 9 projects have been completed to date. Today is the area work on the development, improvement, and modernization of system is carried out with the employment of foreign consultants and financial results, both from UNDP, the World Bank, and a number of other international organizations, in order to achieve significant results based on the improved mechanism used in development countries. And at the end of my speech, I would like to wish you a successful event, active discussions of issues, and exchange of views. Thank you.
Олег Андреевич, большое вам спасибо за замечательную речь. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you for an opening speech, the resident representative of the UNDP Uzbekistan, Ms. Matilda Dimovska. Ms. Dimovska, the floor is all yours.
Rahmat, assalomu alaykum, hurmatli xonimlar va janoblar. Men uchun bugun bu yerda bo'lish katta sharaf. On behalf of United Nations Development Program, I welcome you to this roundtable that we organized together with the Ministry and the World Bank to discuss the Uzbekistan digitalization potential within the context of COVID, but even beyond that. Now, I think that the first deputy minister made a good job in summarizing what the progress of Uzbekistan has been made in terms of digitalization. It can be only commended. The mere fact that even before the pandemic, 2020 was declared as a year of development of science, education, and digital economy. That followed up during the crisis with a number of lifting the digitalization even higher at the development agenda. It became one of the 8 priorities of development priorities of Uzbekistan. We saw a number of resolutions in the meantime. The governance of the digital transformation has been recently strengthened and so on. So just to comment the efforts of Uzbekistan in this area. Now, with the pandemic, the digitalization for any country has become a mandatory, not an optional. We see that digital solutions were critical to ensure the effective service delivery, remote interactions with the citizens and businesses in the most remote areas, and then that it was different tools were very much taken not only by the public but also by the private sector, so that they ensure the business continuity. So that happened, the digitalization and use of its tool in all sectors. So there are 2 questions that at this stage we are facing with. It is not about, the question is not if the digitalization shall and will advance, but it is about the quality of it and how inclusive the digitalization will be. And the crisis also kind of exacerbated many issues that countries still face in their digital journeys. For example, in Uzbekistan, this is the issue of digital inclusion and the limited still internet access, the quality and the reach of mobile services, particularly in the rural areas, the digital skills of not only the civil servants, but also the people in general. Yes, there have been a significant increase into the internet connectivity, the speed, the cost has fallen, but by regional and international benchmarks, Uzbekistan is still lagging, which points to the importance of reforming further the telecommunication sector. And the other question, big question is, are all possibilities of the digitalization explored? As the pandemic moves to the next stage, new challenges emerge and have to be also addressed. Such is, for example, the necessity to deliver social assistance to a large number of people through a mode that without a necessary movement in a digital manner, or the necessity to modernize sectors like agriculture and break the traditional barriers and in cultivating practices. Can the technologies play a role in protecting environment and biodiversity? This is a question that we hear more and more. Can open source digital solutions be introduced in support of a health system even more? And yet, of course, and there are many other questions. But in essence, to reap the benefits of the technology, we still need to have the basics right and make sure that all people are connected and know how to connect. So therefore, it is time to comprehensively look into all of these questions that we all have, and that is the idea of today's roundtable, to kickstart such a discussion in this format to help us better understand what are the opportunities to accelerate recovery in Uzbekistan based on digitalization, how to enhance, how to accelerate inclusive digital transformation, and if we can establish some mechanism for continued dialogue, open dialogue on this topic. We suggest another session on this topic. In fact, we think that it is good, important to involve even more youth of Uzbekistan into this discussion and to get their energy, potential, enthusiasm in this area particularly. And we plan to organize such an event very soon with the Youth Parliament and UN Youth Group. So I hope you will support this area. This, in closing, this event is organized under the aegis of UNDP's technical leadership of the UN system in relation to the socio-economic response to the pandemic, with support from the UN COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. And we are extremely pleased to have been cooperating on this with the Ministry and the World Bank. So I wish all of us a productive event. Let me finish. Etim Boringis Uchun Katarahmat.
Ms. Dimovska, we thank you sincerely for this inspiring opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me now in greeting the World Bank Country Manager for Uzbekistan, Mr. Marco Mantovanelli. Mr. Mantovanelli, the floor is all yours for the opening speech.
Thank you very much, dear First Deputy Minister Pekus, dear Matilda Dimovska, and all partners. It's a pleasure to be here with all you today. The fact that we are all connected digitally, it's really an indication of how much we're living in extraordinary times. The world has faced one of the greatest challenges, and in a very short time, people's lives were transformed to an unprecedented scale. The pandemic has brought a lot of challenges, but also a digital leap in the future. a recent study from McKinsey, the consulting company in the US, indicates that digitalization jumped 5 years ahead in individual and business adoption of digital connection in the space of 8 weeks during the pandemic. This is an indication of how much this agenda has become central to anything we do. We know, however, that particularly that COVID and the challenges of COVID have brought to the surface that those national broadband infrastructure systems and those people and businesses that are connected through better digital platforms are definitely faring better than others. That's why we're talking of a digital divide that needs to be closed. Worldwide, just shy of 50% of the population is still excluded from digital technology. And this is a serious implication in a post-COVID environment. Closing this divide is critical, as the first Deputy Minister and Matilda has just illustrated. It's not just the technology, it's also the quality of it. We know, for example, that in Central Asia, internet subscription and mobile subscription jumped quite forward during the pandemic, but the average speed of access and download is still just above the minimum for teleworking. Minimum for teleworking is set as 25 megabytes per second, and just above that, and far from an adequate 100 per second. So closing the divides means also contributing to building better, which is a mantra that you have been hearing a lot. COVID is not just a challenge, it's an opportunity. And building better means fundamentally supporting better job creation and social inclusion, supporting a growth that contributes, that is built on innovation, and that is sustainable resilience to these challenges. And the digital agenda contributes to all of this by improving connectivity, by improving access to services. In this context, we welcome the modernization efforts carried out in Uzbekistan in recent years. We welcome also that the government is putting the digital agenda at the center of the top priorities for development. We, as World Bank, we are honored to be partner in this journey with the government, with the people of Uzbekistan, and with other development partners like UNDP. In Central Asia, we are working through a program, a regional program called Digital Casa, Digital Central Asia and South Asia. This program will also is being developed also in Uzbekistan. The objective of this regional approach is to increase access to more affordable internet, crowd in private investment in the ICT sector, improve the capacity of governments to deliver digital government services in the region, and develop a more regionally integrated digital infrastructure. We think our studies indicated that the transformation of the telecom sector of Uzbekistan can increase GDP growth by at least 0.8% per annum and create at least 200,000 innovative new jobs, including for youth in the next 5 years. So it's an important agenda with important economic implications. In order to be supported, as I stressed before, we cannot just talk about the technology, we need to talk also about the reforms that create the enabling environment for technology to be properly delivered in a in an affordable and sustainable way to as many people and companies as possible. In this sense, as I said, we see the COVID-19 crisis as an opportunity to make a leap forward with this agenda. Therefore, we really welcome this initiative, and we look forward to continue to collaborate with the government, UNDP, and other partners in supporting the country's digital transformation. The event today has a list of very impressive speakers, and I encourage them all to recommend very concrete and practical actions to unlock the potential for digital transformation during the post-COVID period in Uzbekistan. I will unfortunately not be able to stay until the end, so some of my colleagues will do the closing remarks for the World Bank, but I really look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mantovanelli, thank you so much for your words of wisdom, as well as the light that the World Bank brings to the world. Дорогие друзья, хочу обратиться к вам с одной просьбой. Данное мероприятие будет широко освещаться в СМИ. В обычных условиях у сотрудников наших пиар-отделов была бы возможность сделать много фотографий с разных ракурсов. Но нынешние обстоятельства диктуют свои условия, и единственная возможность запечатлеть данную конференцию – это сделать снимок экрана. Поэтому я хочу попросить всех включить свои видео и по моему сигналу помахать в ваш экран, как бы неестественно это не выглядело. Так. Раз, два, три. Спасибо большое. Я надеюсь, сотрудники пиар-отделов успели сделать снимки. Итак, спасибо всем большое. Дорогие друзья, мы приступаем к нашей первой сессии «Цифровое развитие в Узбекистане. Текущий прогресс и дальнейшее развитие, дальнейшее видение». В данной сессии у нас с вами будет возможность обсудить текущие реформы и планы Узбекистана по цифровому развитию, узнать общий статус о роли женщин в IT и стартап-экосистеме Узбекистана. Бывший сотрудник ЮНДС поделится с нами своими соображениями о развитии электронного правительства в Узбекистане. От директора по цифровому развитию ПРООН мы узнаем о цифровых трансформациях в системе ПРООН. И завершит эту сессию очень интересная презентация про важность данных на сегодняшний день в борьбе против COVID. Дорогие друзья, как вам известно, последние несколько лет Узбекистан по версии Всемирного банка входит в топ стран с самыми быстрыми темпами экономического развития. В нынешней политике развития Узбекистана отчетливо выделяется роль информационных технологий. Многое на сегодняшний день в этой сфере сделано, но еще больше предстоит сделать. Для более детального представления этой темы я хочу передать слово господину Джахангиру Шукурову, начальнику управления развития цифровой стратегии Министерства по развитию информационных технологий и коммуникаций Республики Узбекистан. Джахангир, пожалуйста.
Ассаламу алейкум. Добрый день, уважаемые участники международной конференции. Сегодня я вкратце хочу поделиться проводимыми реформами и планом Республики Узбекистан по цифровому развитию. Хотел бы начать с краткой информации, свою речь, информацию относительно позиции нашей страны в рейтинге ООН. Как мы знаем, наша страна заняла 87-е место по итогам 2020 года оценки. Как мы видим на слайде данного в мире по оценкам наша страна по индексу онлайн-услуг занимает 47-е место, что в свою очередь является хорошим показателем. Также по индексу электронного участия наша страна заняла 46-ю позицию в данном рейтинге. Также по сравнению с прошлым годом данный индекс показывает рост на 13 позиций. В свою очередь это связана с внедрением ряда информационных систем, в котором участвовали мнения людей и внедрили ряд систем. Также по показателям электронного участия Узбекистан занимает 3-е место среди стран СНГ после Казахстана и России. Даже опережает некоторые страны, которые развиты, такие как Германия и Израиль, по данному индексу. Также за последние годы показатели нашей страны по данному индексу показывают неплохую динамику роста. Пользуясь случаем, хотели бы также отметить, что данный показатель, который мы сейчас по итогам 2020 года увидели, дает нам большую работу, которую мы еще должны провести по дальнейшему развитию системы электронного правительства, в частности, развития государственных электронных услуг. Пользуясь случаем, хотел отметить, что для повышения проводимых работ, а также с координацией наших проектов, а также поднятия места нашей страны в данном рейтинге, мы очень заинтересованы и в привлечении технического и консультационного содействия соответствующих структур ООН на ближайшей перспективе. Также хочу отметить, что с 2017 года нами запущена новая версия единого портала государственных услуг. Как мы знаем, система электронного правительства оценивается с предоставлением качественных и автоматизированных электронных услуг населению. В период пандемии нам всем показалось, что введенные карантинные ограничения дали возможность увидеть, насколько мы цифровизировали наши услуги за последние годы, которые мы провели. И в период пандемии мы смогли предоставить ряд основных и очень востребованных услуг в интерактивном виде. В частности, нам помогли ряд центральных порталов, также ряд информационных систем, которые запустили совместно с государственными органами. Также мы на данный момент рассматриваем задачи, такие как предоставление государственных услуг в многоканальном режиме, такие как через отделение почты, через разные порталы государственные, а также иные информационные ресурсы, доступные для предоставления услуг. Также на сегодняшний день для повышения уровня государственных порталов и информационных систем и веб-сайтов государственных органов нами проводятся работы по разработке методики оценки внедрения уровня ИКТ в государственных органах и организациях. Данная методика нам в будущем позволит именно своевременно оценивать проводимые работы нами по цифровизации отраслей и регионов. Принятие данного документа в виде постановления Кабинета министров даст нам в будущем провести системные работы по оценке цифровизации согласно проводимым работами. Также на сегодняшний день нами разрабатывается проект указа президента «Цифровой Узбекистан 2030». Как мы знаем, в период пандемии мы извлекли и для себя конкретные необходимые работы для того, чтобы в ближайшей перспективе, что нам приоритетно надо цифровизировать, перевести на электронный вид услуги. В связи с этим нами сейчас разрабатывается концепция развития Узбекистана до 2030 года. Данная концепция охватывает 5 важнейших направлений нашей деятельности. Первый раздел – это именно цифровая инфраструктура, которая охватывает все важные направления по цифровизации инфраструктуры, развития телекоммуникационных услуг и всей инфраструктуры, которая необходима для цифровизации, для внедрения систем, а также пользования предоставляемыми услугами. Также второе направление – это развитие системы электронного правительства и цифровизация отраслей нашей экономики. Здесь охватываются важные направления данной сферы, а также приоритетные задачи по цифровизации услуг. Здесь мы определяем важные направления жизнедеятельности населения, которые мы в первую очередь должны будем завершить цифровизацию и внедрение интерактивных услуг. Третье направление и четвертое – это связано с рынком индустрии, а также национальным парком программного обеспечения, которое мы должны параллельно развивать в данном направлении. И последнее, один из основных направлений – это образование в сфере ИКТ. Как мы знаем, без умения, навыков пользования ИКТ невозможно качественно использовать те информационные системы, те электронные услуги, которые мы даем, которые мы запускаем в системах. Поэтому мы здесь в направлении образования предусматриваем ряд комплекс мер, которые в будущем будут для нас целями, которые будем достигать. Также к данной концепции мы предусматриваем утверждение основных индикаторов, которые мы предполагаем до 2030 года достичь с разбивкой по соответствующим годам. Для успешной реализации данной концепции мы разрабатываем ряд дорожных карт, которые предусматривают более 50 важных мероприятий. В частности, в дорожной карте реализации стратегий мы охватываем все необходимые базовые мероприятия, которые дают в краткосрочной перспективе основные фундаментальные основы для цифровизации нашей деятельности. Также в других дорожных картах, в частности, дорожная карта по развитию электронных государственных услуг и сервисов, здесь мы будем охватывать все важные направления жизнедеятельности, которые услуги мы должны в ближайшей перспективе цифровизировать, а также те информации, которые постепенно должны опубликовать портал открытых данных, а также автоматизировать данные процессы для того, чтобы опубликование важных данных происходили именно в режиме реального времени, с интеграцией с информационных систем соответствующих органов. Также следующая дорожная карта у нас намечена на осуществление и развитие биллинговой системы электронного правительства. Как мы знаем, с внедрением разного рода услуг в едином портале, а также веб-сайтах и других ресурсов важен тот момент, чтобы люди могли оплачивать за оказанные услуги в режиме реального времени, не выходя из своих офисов, из своих домов, чтобы это можно было осуществлять через мобильные платежные системы. Данная дорожная карта охватывает подключение более 40 информационных систем к нашей биллинговой системе. Также мы предусматриваем отраслевые и региональные дорожные карты по цифровизации наших регионов и отраслей, в котором мы охватываем более 80 проектов, которые предусматривают разработку и внедрение информационных систем. Также в данных дорожных картах мы учитываем развитие инфраструктуры, а также образование. В частности, повышение квалификации так и государственных органов, сотрудников, также и населения в центрах цифровых технологий, а также реализация проекта «1 миллион программистов». Теперь хочу остановиться в краткосрочных проектах именно в направлении государственного управления на сегодняшний день, который мы поставляем в приоритетном уровне. Здесь мы предлагаем на регулярной основе проводить аудит информационных систем, государственных органов, тем, чтобы своевременно оценивать необходимость внедрения данных информационных систем, а также готовности государственных органов к внедрению тех или иных технологий, а также во избежание дублирования информационных систем государственных органов. Данный аудит будет предоставлять нам обширную информацию по состоянию телекоммуникационной готовности государственных органов, информационной безопасности, а также общего уровня цифровизации данных государственных органов. Кроме того, нам необходимо усиление контроля за деятельностью государственных органов по внедрению информационных технологий. В связи с этим предлагается, чтобы государственные органы по согласованию с уполномоченными органами на ежегодной основе разрабатывали и утверждали ведомственные дорожные карты по цифровизации своей деятельности. Данные мероприятия нам в будущем дадут позитивные результаты, чтобы проводились нами работы именно целенаправленные были, чтобы каждое внедрение системы мы могли получать экономический эффект и чтобы люди почувствовали те системы, которые мы внедряем. Также в краткосрочных проектах IT-индустрии хотели бы вкратце на 3 проектах остановиться. Первое – это создание портала программных продуктов национального. Здесь мы предусматриваем создание единой базы данных местных IT-компаний и разработчиков. Данный портал будет предназначен для содействия именно резидентам, чтобы их продвигать услуги, чтобы они размещали свои разработки именно здесь, на портале, чтобы они могли продвигать и на внутреннем рынке своей продукции, и на внешнем рынке. Также размещение всех государственных и корпоративных заказов, которые на сегодняшний день ведутся государственными органами и организациями. А также возможность получения обратной связи от населения, чтобы какие у них предложения есть, чтобы по цифровизации, которые мы на данный момент не учитываем, либо нам остро нужны, чтобы это предложение можно было внедрять и анализировать. Также у нас остро направление имеется направление развития дальнейшего IT-парка, программы продуктов, а также поддержка отечественных его резидентов. Таким способом обучение сотрудников резидентов по информационным технологиям, навыкам, а также разработки программного обеспечения разного рода, повышение квалификации, а также развитие робототехники в нашей стране и оказанию экспортных информационных услуг через разные рода площадки. Также нами ведутся работы по открытию филиалов IT-парка во всех регионах нашей республики. И также я бы хотел остановиться над важными проектами, инфраструктурными проектами электронного правительства на сегодняшний день, которым мы уже занимаемся. В частности, я хотел бы отметить, что основные проекты, которые мы делаем, первый проект по внедрению альтернативных методов идентификации. В частности, хотим создать возможность, чтобы люди могли автоматизироваться также и через телефон мобильной связи, а также создать мобильную версию единого портала государственных услуг и совершенствовать функционал данного портала. Также создание системы уведомлений граждан электронного правительства, которые очень нужны при получении разного рода услуг, а также информации. Также мы хотим модернизировать систему классификаторов и справочников, а также создание единого реестра информационных систем государственных органов, а также информационные системы, которые межведомственные, необходимы оказываемому по жизненному циклу. Спасибо всем за внимание. На этом все.
May I please ask the speakers to watch your watches, please, because timing is crucial for this event. Mr. Shukurov, thank you very much for these revelations on reforms in IT sphere of Uzbekistan. It is quite clear to all of us that these developments are quite comprehensive and well thought. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, no country can report of its development in any area unless its development takes into account the most basic principles like gender balance. One of the significant aspects of reforms carried out in Uzbekistan include increasing the role of women in building civil society and government administration. And although in Uzbekistan this comes as a result of effective changes to legislation, the key players of the economy are making their significant inputs in steering these changes in the society. I would like to invite Ms. Sasha Sternik for sharing her thoughts with us on the role of women in the IT and startup ecosystem of Uzbekistan, reality and recommendations. Sasha, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Bahadur. That's very kind of you, dear colleagues. It's my absolute pleasure to address you. My name is Sasha Sternik. I'm the head of external relations and investment team at IT Park. And today, indeed, I will be speaking about the role of women in IT and startup ecosystem. It's quite obvious that women are half of the population, and without including them, without giving them equal opportunities, without helping them, we can't really achieve prosperity and sustainable development. While I will be talking about the statistic you can see on the slide in a minute, I would just like to say that the government and the society is already doing so much in order to address this indeed pressing issue. We are trying our best. However, there are some problems that are still in need of resolvement. There's always way to improvement. As you can see here, 4,700 plus girls were married off before the age of 18. 11% of families in Uzbekistan are poverty-stricken. There were more than 32,000 divorces in 2018. More than 180 people, well, women, were suffering from abusive behavior in their families. And the staggering number, the gender pay gap, is 38.6%. It's something that we need to address, because if we want to build a sustainable ecosystem, if we want to see Uzbekistan being prosperous, and if we want to see it progressing, we need to be talking about this more. And while we already do, there is still place, and I think this is the place and this is the time when we could and we should address this. So with regards to one of our kind hosts, the UN and the UNDP, we need to talk about this also because of the sustainable goals and the sustainable development goals, because you actually might be surprised on how many of these are relevant to gender equality. No poverty. Remember those 11% I've said before? Well, in most cases, the single breadwinner in these families is a man, it's a husband. So it's something that we need to work on. Quality education. There is unfortunately quite a significant number of women who are deprived of education for various reasons. I will be talking about this a little bit later too. Gender equality, for obvious reasons. And I think most surprisingly, industry innovation infrastructure, because when women are being oppressed and they're not really being allowed, or rather not welcome to become engineers or physicists or developers, they just have a problem here, because we might be losing brilliant people, we might be losing innovators, we might be using scientists, we might be using people who are driving industry further, any industry really. Well, I'm talking about IT specifically because this is my sphere. It's just something that we really need to address because there is a direct connection, because obviously women are half of the population, and when half of the population is not really welcomed to do something, you will get half or even less of the results you could have expected otherwise. So the answer to most of those problems, at least in my opinion, would be IT. So let's talk about education. There's a huge problem in most traditional families, or the families which might have income below average, that if there is a daughter and there is a son, it might be the son who might go to university. Because, well, you know, if you're a daughter, you're going to be married, you will become a housewife. Why do you need higher education? And the guy will actually go build his career. He will be the one who brings bread to the table, and, you know, it's important for him. And here is where I do have a problem. Because, you know, it's fine if you don't want to go to university, but you must have an opportunity to. It must be your own choice. So we need to address the university issues. Anecdotally, I've been told by one of my interns who's female that in their university, which is one of the biggest and one of the most prestigious universities in the country, they've been told that I will not give you the mark as good as this dude will get, because you're a girl, you will get married, you will become a mom, you'll never get back to IT. Why would I even bother? And this is not okay. We need to work around and to promote courses. We need to work with Coursera, edX, you name it. We need to provide support, because maybe there is a problem that a woman is not really capable of or doesn't want to leave their houses for many reasons. Maybe it's because of the traditions, maybe she's married and her husband isn't really happy about it, which is a topic for another discussion, of course. Maybe she has young kids, maybe she just doesn't want to go to university, and that's absolutely fine. And this is something we need to address. Maybe they want to self-study, so we need to provide them with their resources. Maybe they want to pick up a new skill, maybe they want to do something else. We just need to give them an opportunity to show themselves. We need to get them work. Because 11% that I have mentioned earlier of people who are starving, well, or on the age of starvation, and the woman is not really working for whatever reason. Maybe she doesn't have time, maybe she doesn't have an opportunity to, but we as a society, we as a government, we as her support group, we should be helping her doing this. Maybe she can't leave the house, once again, for whatever reason it is. We need to develop the freelance culture, but I will also be talking about this a little bit later. And of course, income surplus. Even if you have enough money as a household, you still need to earn money if you want to, of course. Just because you need this to feel sufficient, to feel self-sustainable. Maybe you're in an abusive relationship and you can't really leave, because then you know that you'll be on the street with no money. Because IT, with the opportunity to work remotely, with the opportunity to do so many things in IT, can bring the freedom from abuse and degradation, and it can put them into perspective to the brighter future. Essentially, we at IT Park have already started the project Tomorrow is Tech with the support of USAID's Future Growth Initiative. We are working towards women who in the rural areas who just needs this extra push of those extra skills. We are working with women who are willing to start their own business during our incubation acceleration programs. And we're working with women, and I would say both genders rather, who are very much about investing and seeing sustainable investing. So, about our first wave of incubation acceleration, I just thought that's something worth mentioning. We saw people from 15 to 51. We saw amazing projects, and we actually had a staggering response. We had 203 applications, which actually shows the potential of women in this country, that shows that there are women who are bright and who can do so much, and we just need to support them. We need to help them. And this is what I think what we could do, once again, as a society, as a government, as cooperation with maybe non-governmental organizations whose representatives I know are being present here. We could create an impact investing or loan organization, which would be dedicated to support female founders. I mean, of course, I'm talking about venture investing like IT startups, but that really can be extended to all small businesses. But it doesn't need that much money in the global scale, because those women really just need like from $5,000 to $15,000, because they might not be able to get this funding from somewhere else, and they might want to start their business. And just telling you, statistically, startups which are being founded by women are actually more successful, but that's just for information. Educational subsidies, because of course, some women might not have an opportunity to go to university because of the financial problems, and this is something that we might rather we should support them with, because once again, we're losing so many brilliant scientists, physicists, engineers. So we could set up a scholarship for those women to study either in the country or abroad. Of course, in the country, that would be more dedicated towards people in the regional areas of Uzbekistan, in more rural areas rather, because it's expensive and it's not something that's supposed to be the reason not to go and not to study. We need to develop freelance culture. Of course, COVID has helped us with that, because, you know, we are not allowed to leave our houses. We're supposed to be socially distancing. We need to work from home, but we need to normalize that, because there are many people, women, who would rather prefer to work from home because that's their time, that's their money. They can spend time with their kids or for whatever reason, and we need to provide them with opportunity. But most importantly, we need to create role models. We need to empower women. We need to be showing them that it doesn't matter whether you're wearing sneakers or you're wearing heels, you can still do that. The fact that you're a girl does not mean that you're any worse or any better than if you would be a boy. We need to bring this idea that if you're a girl, you can do anything. Thank you for your attention, your support. We're working for the equal future, and I hope you found this presentation enjoyable.
Ms. Sternik, thank you very much for your interesting analysis and several eye-opening revelations that I pointed out for myself. Now, one question that I might ask you when we get to the Q&A session is on the way this increasing role of women in IT and startups can be measured, and on the benchmarks that we can use for that purpose. But for now, I will turn with the same question, but on e-government development, to our next speaker. Now, e-government development, ladies and gentlemen, has been assigned a very high priority from early days of Uzbekistan's independence. Now, this focus has shifted even higher upwards during the last several years of the new administration. The president of Uzbekistan has made it very clear that from the first days of his assignment, he will rely heavily on technological solutions in developing all areas of our economy. Now, regardless of our own assessments of the progress made in the e-government development, e-government survey by UNDESA provides an objective picture of where we are right now on this path and reveals the areas that we need to improve even further. We hope to obtain more information on this from our next speaker, Mr. Richard Kirby, an independent expert, former UNDESA staff. Over to you, Mr. Kirby.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the government of Uzbekistan, my colleagues in UNDP, and the World Bank for inviting me to speak today. The UN survey is actually a unique survey. It's one of the few surveys in the world that actually assesses all 193 countries. And I think it's one of the most objective surveys there is. But the goal of the survey is not to actually rank countries, even though that's the end results from the reports, but it's to provide information, provide policies, provide guidelines and guidances to help countries develop this kind of digital transformation strategy in order to improve the lifestyles of their people. So the goal of the UN when I was there, and it's still the goal today, is that the numbers itself are basically used as mathematical tools. The real goal of the survey is how do you benchmark country X versus country Y? Why is country X moving forward? Why is country Y going downwards? And that's the kind of information we're trying to, glean out of the different data that we receive. So the data itself is supposed to be objective, it's straightforward, it's done by independent advisors and volunteers to make sure that the right numbers are there. So I would urge all governments to look at the survey not as just a ranking aspect of it, but more as a development tool. So the survey this year, the top 15 countries are clearly identified. Mostly are Denmark, Korea, Estonia, Finland, Australia, Sweden, and the list goes on. And if you look at the list right now, there's not really much difference between the top 15 or 14 countries. We're talking about decimal points, 0.8, 0.2, point nothing. It's really irrelevant. So whether Denmark is 1 and Korea is 2, they're essentially 2 excellent countries. And that's essentially, we're looking at 14 excellent countries. And that's why the US also expanded the ranking to include groups. So for example, if you scored above 75 or 7.75, you are considered very high EDI. If you score between 0.5 and 0.75, you are considered high EGDI. So essentially, Uzbekistan is considered a high EGDI country because they score between 0.5 and 0.7. So those are the kinds of grouping that are being used right now in order to ensure that people don't focus solely on that one little number that says, okay, I went up 5 steps or I went down the 4 positions. Is it a good or bad thing? It's not really that important as long as the people have the right applications, the right services, the right content, the right data in order to use what the government provides them. So as I mentioned before, this is so in 2020, almost 1/3, 30% of all the countries were higher than 0.75, right? And then if you look at the figures for the high GDI, it's equally high. So countries we've seen the last 2 years that countries are giving a much more relevance and importance to digital government, and therefore they are scoring a lot higher. You know, so look in 2 years, the low DGI went from 16% to 8%, which means that much more countries in developing countries are taking this serious now, and now they're able to use the new tools of the fourth industrial revolution, including artificial intelligence, content development, all that, to provide a better lifestyle for their people. And that's the major goal of the UN survey. But people still focus a lot on the ranking, and it's good to brag if you did very well and to be upset when you didn't do very well. And our goal is to make sure everyone is happy in terms of the score they received. And this is a global aspect of it. And you can see most of the countries are basically in dark blue and a good shade of blue, which means you're high or very high. And that's almost the entire Northeast, all of Europe, most of Asia, and only Africa most of Africa has the low and the medium EGI. And EGI is the E-Government Development Index, just to make reference to all these things. So when we look at the key trends, because what we actually do for the online survey is essentially look at the national portals of the government, and then look at the educational portal, employment portal, health portal, social protection, environment, and this case we had also justice. So what is the UN looking at in terms of that? They're looking at governments who are more open, who actually share information about the budget, where's the money being spent, transparency, all that is important. So if I have a budget of $1.2 billion, how am I spending that on education? How am I spending that on health and so forth? And very few countries provide that information out there. So the more open you are, the more transparent you are, the higher you actually go up in the survey ranking. Other speakers have talked about open data. Open data is a very good aspect to it, but it's not just open data. You have to provide the APIs with the open data. So people who are developers can start using these types of data in order to create the systems, the solutions that can be used. And then as you put more data available, the role of government shifts from being we do everything to we becoming a simple platform where we provide information, we provide guidance, we provide knowledge, and allow others to get involved as well. And when that happens, you have much more trust in government. You have much more people, the number of people that can actually develop application rises immensely because I have all the government data and I know how to use it and I can develop better products. Again, and again, you have advanced features as well. So advanced search features. So if I search for house, I don't type the word home, I still get the same query. In most websites, you don't get that. If you type the word house and the word house does not exist somewhere, you will not get the information. So advanced search options are important. How to use online services, creating tutorials, how to flag corruptions, how to chat, just to get more information, more flavor, instead of simply having a simple screen where you keep, going pushing buttons in order to get a service. So as long as government is able to provide a kind of the great environment to allow its users to get a good experience, a good user experience, that's also very important. And then we look at online service that focus to the youth, the women, migrant, older workers, people with disabilities, people living in poverty, to try to boost up the SDGs within that country, because they're the ones who are usually left out. Those who have the right amount of money can always get information, can always get services online. But we're looking at how governments are ensuring that the least person or group within their country is still getting the same type of services as those who have the ability to pay for it. The procurement process is also important. That's also part of the transparency aspect of it. Can I apply online for bidding for government services? Can I send a digital invoice? So everything is transparent. We know who won. We know why they won, which company won, and it's no longer a hidden issue. So as countries become more open to the open procurement aspect, it's also incredible. It's also, I would say, it leads to greater accountability. It leads to greater trust among the people, and it's a more open system. And the other issue about the SDGs is content. A lot of governments today look at digital transformation simply as e-services. And what the UN survey is saying slightly different is that no, content is equally important as e-services. So it's not just okay to put a bunch of services online, because essentially it's the government that benefits. They find an easy way of getting the services done, and they get paid faster. But if you provide more content, like for on COVID-19, on education, on health, on environment, you provide more content of information out there, then they're used as a reason to go back into your server to get information, and not just to do a service, but to get real content, which is also important. So we look at Uzbekistan as a glance. If you look at the 220 and 218 data, there's not much difference between the two, right? But still, Uzbekistan dropped 6 spaces. So which tells you that if you stay pat, countries will pass you by, because countries continue to improve. So if you look at the online service index for Uzbekistan, in 2020 it was 7.8, in 2018 it was 7.9. So even though the number was higher in 2018, the ranking was higher in 2020 with a lower number. And the same thing for the human capital index and the e-participation index as well. So Uzbekistan has actually improved in 3 of the 4 categories since 2018 over 2020, and just slightly decreased by 0.01% in the online service, yet they still went down. So the object is, why is this happening? And it's happening because you have to be extremely innovative to move up 10, 15, 20 steps. And I believe that Uzbekistan has the potential in the 2022 survey of going up 20 to 25 points positions if they play their cards right, if they develop the right information out there. And I'm talking about the following. I'm talking about implementing artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, the ability to transform innovation into sustainable development dividends, decreasing the connectivity gap, where not just the major cities have access, but all of the country has access. And we talked about the digital skills. That's also important, because that's why the human capital index is important. You can have the best services in the world, but if someone doesn't know how to use it, it's irrelevant to them, because they can't actually use the services. And the other issue is that it's not just about providing services, it's about providing quality services. All right, you can have 1,000 e-services out there. If the quality is not there, the people will not be satisfied with it, and they will not actually use it. So quality of online services is key to ensure that people are using your services. And we're talking about also the legal and the policy regulatory framework. Electronic transactions are key, protecting your data, privacy, and cyber crime prevention. You have to ensure that your citizens and residents feel comfortable giving you information and giving you data and giving you their money. If they're not comfortable, it doesn't work. And the last issue is about better sectorial content, talking about education content, health content, environment content. If those things are in place and Uzbekistan improves on all these things, they've got a very good chance of doing extremely well on the 2022 survey. We talk about e-participation. in essence, we're looking at the open government data aspect of it, access to information, access to consultation. Are people is the typical Uzbeki citizen, can he or she make a comment that's going to change a policy within the country? Can he or she provide that kind of input, and then the input is actually used? So therefore, the citizen feels more empowered to provide more inputs to you because they see the changes are being done by simply giving their advice, giving their opinion, and going and so forth. And then we can expand from that, you know. So what's the dialogue from the political point of view? Are we talking about voting aspect? Are we what's the political aspect to it? It's not just for providing policy and public service, but also looking at how all these things dovetail together in order for the whole country to be available to use the kind of crowdsourcing that takes place among the citizenry to ensure that you have better policies, you have more better collaboration. You're empowering your users because now they see their feedback being incorporated into it. And my last slide is this one. I think this is the best slide in the entire UN e-government survey. These are the key pillars that allow you to move forward. And I'm going to just focus on 2 or 3 of them. The first one is the vision, the leadership, and the mindset. Right? In order to transform the digital transformation of a country, the leadership plays a major role in that. And the government of Uzbekistan is already doing that. But if they go a few steps further up, a few steps just to strengthen that kind of policy issue and the vision out there, we say this is where our goal is, and then start putting the right resources in place. You have a great chance to go forward. And the third one is number 3. The culture of the country needs to change as well. You want to have a digital savvy culture where all people can actually access information. And they understand what social network is all about. They understand what e-service is all about, what open data is all about. That's critical as well. Data governance. You have a number of data sets in there, but not enough compared to other countries. So Uzbekistan has to redouble their energy into providing data in all different types of sector, and then creating these APIs to develop an API economy that will allow anyone to use any developer to use the data to create better systems and better services. So these are the key things. Of course, infrastructure you know about already because that's one of the major things. But those are the 3 things I would focus on: data governance, the culture, and then changing strengthening the leadership and vision and the mindset. And if you put those with those other 6 categories here, you're going to do extremely good job. I think Uzbekistan is set to move forward fairly quickly as long as they look at the guidance that the UN is providing in terms of the key roadmap, the key pillars roadmap, and then actually implementing them. So I want to thank you for the time, and I look forward to supporting Uzbekistan in where I can. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirby, for your wonderful presentation. Uzbekistan is truly proud to have partners like you who help us with specific instructions on the way forward. I've been contemplating over the key pillars of a roadmap outlined in your presentation. I realized that one of the main organizations that have been serving Uzbekistan as a trigger in developing many of those areas is the United Nations Development Program.
Yes.
Now, even if we refer back to the presentation of Ms. Sasha Sternik on the role of women in IT and startups, that too has come to a significant development in Uzbekistan as a result of various initiatives and projects of UNDP. Now, the role of UNDP cannot be overestimated. Not only does it come with technical and financial aid to countries like Uzbekistan, but it also serves as a beacon to show the member countries the best way forward. And it shows the way, as the saying goes, not to where the puck is right now, but where the puck will be there when we get there. Now, we're primarily talking about digital transformation here. UNDP is a fine institution that, armed with information about newest technologies, amalgamates all the best practices around the world and presents them to the member countries, allowing them to take the leap forward. For more information about digital transformation in UNDP, I would like to invite Mr. Robert Opp, the Chief Digital Officer at UNDP. Mr. Op, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. And as a Canadian citizen, your analogy to the hockey puck and where it's going makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you very much for that introduction. Yes, well, I'm going to give a presentation today a little bit about how UNDP sees digital transformation, both in the context of our own organization, but as well as how we support governments worldwide, and to try to bring a few of those lessons into this conversation, which is really a great one. So for our starting point, of course, and the reason why I think all of us are talking today is that the emergence of these new and powerful digital technologies really are driving an opportunity for us to embrace these things as tools to achieve our national development goals. And it isn't just the individual technologies of artificial intelligence and blockchain and so on and so forth, but it's the convergence of them that make it such an exciting and powerful time. And of course, what we're here to look at as the UNDP is how do we apply these opportunities to the Sustainable Development Goals. We know that globally governments are very eager to embrace the opportunity of new technologies. This was the case before COVID and has accelerated since then as well. But we know that governments worldwide are looking to see how these can be fundamental parts of building strong and inclusive societies. Digital also brings challenges with it. So we have challenges around data privacy of citizens and data of governments. We have challenges around the digital divide and how to include all parts of the population. Challenges in misinformation and sometimes misuse of social media platforms for purposes that are detrimental to development. And then we know that there are also some challenges globally, like carbon emissions from data centers and things that are really parts of this overall trend toward digital technology. So we need to understand that it is not just all benefits, there's some challenges there as well. And this is really the fundamental reason why UNDP launched its own digital strategy. This was created at the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019, because from the organization side, we understand that the context in which development is taking place globally is truly changing as a result of the use of these new technologies and the emergence of new technologies. Our strategy as an organization is actually fairly simple. It basically is saying that we, as the United Nations Development Program, we are here to serve our partner governments. And if we want to do that, we have to understand how our own programs, our own technical advice, our own implementation support is able to understand and use digital technologies to the most effective way. The second pathway, though, is that we understand that if we are actually supporting governments, government partners in their journey, we have to understand and make sure that we are able to be as modern, as IT driven, as focused on our own quality and cost efficiency as possible as using digital technologies. So we see these two pathways as part of the overall digital transformation. However, this investment, this effort was already underway when COVID hit. The COVID pandemic has basically put everything in acceleration mode, as some of your speakers have mentioned already. So we understand that digital technology is absolutely critical for supporting policies like social distancing, for supporting the kind of reaching people online in a very difficult time in remote areas that can't move around. And we also understand that there are an acceleration of the challenges as well. How do we fight the misinformation? How do we ensure that if we're bringing in measures to address COVID, how do we make sure that we are preserving people's rights and data privacy? Inside UNDP, we are seeing that our own country offices have created around 200 different types of digital responses worldwide. And so what this means is that digital is extremely relevant to our government partners, but also our own response. And we're tracking these responses in a database that's available to all of the country offices worldwide who are learning from each other how this is happening. To give you a sense of what those digital responses are, we can actually categorize them on this slide. And this is really one of the kind of more important pieces that I wanted to leave with you, that there's a tremendous range of responses that are out there for the COVID pandemic. If I start at the bottom of this slide, we look at that level of infrastructure and capacity building. What has happened globally is that our government partners have come to us to ask for support and how they can extend very quickly video conferencing platforms, different kind of remote equipment to be used by civil servants who are working in their homes, and in some cases providing literacy training for civil servants or other parts of the population to be able to participate in the digital services being offered. In the middle of this diagram, you see a range of different kinds of digital tools. So we see, for example, increased usage of data platforms of countries that have realized they need to bring data together from different ministries to be able to actually make better decisions around health response and socioeconomic recovery. There's also platforms around citizen engagement and being able to have a two-way conversation with citizens about messaging about what's important for COVID response, but also understanding where the needs are. There's tremendous interest in the area of e-commerce and digital finance. So particularly among the informal sector, where informal traders have been not able to reach their normal customers, but if they are able to put their business online, they can still do transactions. There's also all of the efforts around provision of government services online. And I think Uzbekistan already has a very strong record in this, but really we see governments racing as a result of the pandemic to increase the number of services that are being put online. And then at the top layer of this slide, what we see is the regulatory aspects of usage of new technologies and the kind of overall transformation support. We are seeing more and more interest from government partners about how they are able to tackle the digital transformation in a holistic way. Just to give you a couple examples, just to show the sort of the range that we have. In that area of regulatory support, strategy advice, we see countries like Bangladesh looking at provision of policies for artificial intelligence usage. We see countries like Djibouti looking at an overall digital economy strategy and how they can reform their legal system, looking at the digital innovation frameworks and the ecosystem for Thailand. And one of the things that we're doing internally as well is we're building a tool for what we call a digital readiness assessment. And this is something that we're able to engage with the government partner and really look at the kind of readiness for different aspects of digital development. We're also seeing in that tools and solutions level, we're looking at all sorts of different responses. So for example, Sri Lanka has developed a Facebook-based chatbot that is able to really help people understand what government services are available, where they can be found, and so on and so forth. We see countries like Guinea-Bissau doing things like the two-way communication with citizenry, also having as a means of giving small grants out to people who need support in an urgent release kind of way. I talked about the e-commerce platforms, and we see a good example of that from Uganda, where there's over 2,000 farmers that were essentially small producers selling in markets have been put online and able to continue their business that way. And finally, in Bangladesh, we see a scale up of the court system. And this is an interesting one because Bangladesh had already invested in a lot of digital support as well. And they were able to within months of the start of COVID, they have actually created about 65,000 judgments on courts online. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is just, what does this all tell us? What does COVID tell us, that acceleration about where digital development is going? I think really one of the most important things we can take away is that digital services are incredible ways of maintaining continuity at a time when, for example, in the COVID pandemic, people are not able to interact as much. But if you're on the wrong side of the digital divide, if you do not have internet access, internet connectivity, you are not able to benefit from that. So we're starting to see that a real increased emphasis on internet connectivity as a fundamental need, a fundamental right. Secondly, the investment in digital foundations is important. And we see a major distinction between countries that had already invested in digital foundations prior to the pandemic and those that had not. And so I think Uzbekistan is in good shape with this because I've understood that there are many things that have happened already. So there's a good solid foundation there. Some other countries had not invested as much and found themselves really scrambling to respond quickly in the pandemic. And lastly, just having digital services doesn't mean that everybody can access them. Even having internet availability is not a guarantee of that, because you need to be able to afford it. So as we think about how we roll out our digital transformation work, we have to be consciously thinking of the youth element, of the gender elements, as one of the earlier speakers said, of people who are disabled. How do we make sure that this is a benefit that is shared by everybody? And with that, I will leave it there. And thank you very much to the government of Uzbekistan and our host, the World Bank, and my colleague Matilda for having me.
Mr. Opp, thank you very much for your presentation, and we praise your efforts in helping UNDP serve Uzbekistan in the most efficient way. Ladies and gentlemen, the crisis that the humanity is facing right now has shown us the ultimate importance of data. The importance of data has so far been discussed on strategic levels by governments, analytical institutions, and private companies. Today, the need for a valid and trustworthy data is felt in every single household. People crave for valid information when they face questions like, how do I prevent myself from catching COVID? Have I just got flu, or is this COVID? How do I cure it? So many people are dying around me, according to mass media. What do I do? Am I going to die? Are we all going to die? Now, some of these questions may be a little bit over-exaggerated, but they do nevertheless show importance of trust and access to data, which is exactly what our next speaker will share his thoughts on with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet Mr. Andrew Stott, World Bank consultant, former Director for Transparency and Digital Engagement of the UK government. Mr. Stott, great to see you with us today.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for that introduction. I think a number of speakers later on are going to talk specifically about data flows and systems related to the COVID-19 response itself, and there's been some very interesting work on that. I thought that I would step back from that and talk about trust and access to data in improving economic and societal performance, and some of the lessons we're learning from COVID, and in the context of the work we've been doing with in the World Bank with the government of Uzbekistan in terms of a data strategy as part of the government strategy, and the institutions that might drive that, and how we could work with the IT part for instance, and also draw on some of the lessons we've done working on data strategies and data policies for other countries, including those in the region. So trust and access to data. So good data is essential, especially in a time of a crisis. And good data is needed for operations. If you can't measure it, then you can't manage it. And as a former crisis manager for part of the UK government in the past, you know, when you're sent in to sort something out, the first thing is to find that you haven't got the data you need in order to take decisions and then to drive action. So you need good data for operations. You need good data to plan strategy. Your interventions need to address the cause, not just the effect. So you need data that allows you to establish what is happening. Then you need data to be able to do analysis, to be able to model not only the threat, but also the response to that and how that will phase in. And finally, you need good data for transparency. That especially in situations of crisis, the government, the institutions need to give the public data about what is going on, and credible data and up-to-date data. Otherwise, the rumor machine, especially in the days of social media, will invent data to fill that gap. So good data is essential for a crisis. That data needs to be good and to flow easily. That means it needs to be timely, up to date. It needs to be accurate enough. That doesn't mean 100% accurate, but accurate enough. It needs to be consistent over time. If you keep changing the definitions, then people won't be able to follow it. It needs to use common standards so it can be shared by people and they can interpret it. You need to be able to find it. So the data needs to have been catalogued with the right metadata and then made findable. And one of the things we've found looking at other countries is that there's a whole framework needed in order to be able to share data. You need laws that allow the sharing, you need procedures to do that, you need technologies that allow the sharing. And in a situation of crisis, you may need to change that law very quickly, as was done in the UK. My picture is of two officers of the US Air Force at the end of the Second World War. The one on the right is Curtis LeMay, who was in charge of the US Air Force in the Pacific Theater. But the guy on the left is a very youthful Robert McNamara, who later went on to be John Kennedy's Secretary of Defense and was later a distinguished president of the World Bank. And in the Second World War, he headed the Office of Statistical Analysis for the US Air Force in the Pacific. And he had this tremendous reputation for being driven by the numbers. And so the image of him in the Second World War is he sat in an office in Washington and worked on spreadsheets in the days when you had to fill in spreadsheets with pencil. In fact, during the Second World War, what he spent a lot of his time doing was touring commands in the Pacific, talking to senior officers, impressing on them why it was important for them to collect and report timely and accurate data, and then teaching them how to use data to improve their operations and improve their planning. So data isn't just about data analysts sitting watching a screen. It's also getting top management to understand the importance of data and to make their data available to others and to use the data that's available to them. So this isn't a new issue, and it's not just about technology. It's about organization, management, and preparing for crises. I know we're very short of time, so I'll go to just very quickly. COVID-19 has shown how important this is. It's appeared very quickly. We've had to do a lot at a time when people are not able to do as much. So there's been a crisis there. There are time lags in the system. There's administrative distortion. In the UK, death figures on Sundays and Mondays are much lower than on other days of the week. And this isn't because people don't die on Saturdays and Sundays. It's because people don't register deaths on Saturdays and Sundays. It's a weekend. So you get that administrative distortion, and people say, oh, the deaths have gone down by 50%, there must be a success. No, actually on the Tuesday, there's a big catch up. So you've got administrative distortion in the system. And finally, there's a binary approach to privacy. A lot of the work we do on privacy is about confidentiality. And in many circumstances, there's a public need to be able to use data elsewhere in government, but with a proportionate effect on privacy. So you might authorize it for one use, but not for another. So going beyond COVID-19, some of the lessons we need to learn: better standards, better cataloging, so we know what data we've got, investing in data and getting the quality right, even if you don't have an immediate need for that data. Think of privacy in terms of controlling the use of data, not just who has access to it. Reduce those frictional costs of data sharing. You know, how do you get two organizations to share data? And what are the practical, non-technical barriers as well as technical barriers in doing so? Challenging the key services and professions to adopt digital and data-driven techniques. So are we able to deliver healthcare? Are we able to deliver education by digital means, or is the culture of the professions still too face-to-face? And regulatory actions that ensure that digital systems in society have the capacity to cope with surge. So putting in enough bandwidth, ensuring that the financial system can cope with a surge in transactions. And as the previous speaker has said, actually that bandwidth there allows then people to use digital delivery mechanisms much more during a crisis than they would normally do. So thank you for that, and I hope we've got time for a few questions on the very interesting presentations that have gone before. Thank you.
Mr. Stott, thank you so much for your very enriching presentation on the topic that, as I said, has never been more crucial. Ladies and gentlemen, as expected, we've run into the timing challenge, very usual for events with extremely interesting presentations. So we will be able to take one or two questions, but please bear in mind that this conference is not the only platform for discussing your questions. Our organizers will gladly provide you with contacts of our participants to take these discussions beyond this meeting. I will now open the floor to questions from participants to our speakers on presentations they delivered. Please. As you ask your question, please refer to a specific presenter.
Can we start with the question that you asked Sasha Sternik during her presentation, and give some time to other speakers to prepare?
Yeah, thank you for reminding this. Sasha, do you remember the question?
Unfortunately, no. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I was too invested in other presenters.
Yeah. How do we? Are there any ways of measuring the progress in developing or in raising the role of women? Now, for example, if we take several countries, is there any way of saying that role of women in this country is higher than this one? Are there any quantitative or qualitative ways of measuring this?
Oh, for sure, for sure. We could be talking about number of women on the C-level. We can be talking about number of women in various boards of various companies. We can be talking about number of women founders, female founders, sorry. We could also be talking about the number of women in politics, because politics normally has been perceived as strictly male-dominated space, unfortunately, in most countries. And this could be something that we could actually be discussing. The point of pride for me is that the Speaker of the Senate in Uzbekistan is actually female, which is not really the case in many other countries. We could also be talking about number of, if we were talking about more quantitative analysis, we could be talking about number of mentioning in the press, in other social media, or in other really ways of consuming information, how much time would be spent discussing female founders or female politicians versus male politicians. Because in some cases, when we're talking about female influencers, and I'm not meaning like Instagram influencers, but rather real influencers, we get articles like, oh no, she's wearing red instead of blue, what does it mean about her? Or, oh no, she put on a few extra pounds, or something like that. And it's quite rare when people are actually talking about the real achievements. And if we just compare that, normally when we're talking about male politicians or male founders or something, we're talking about their achievements, we're talking about their progresses, we're talking about how much they improve the sphere or what they've done. And this is something I think it would be very interesting to track and to analyze, because I'm sure as many women who are being present right now would agree with me, there's a huge disbalance. And generally, if we're talking about the number of women in the leadership positions, there's also a thing that, unfortunately, the world is still very much biased toward men because, oh no, you're a woman, you can get pregnant. Oh no, you're a woman, you can get married. And so many other reasons are like, oh no, you're a woman. Well, for some reason, people do not consider that like men can get paternal leave. Men can also get married and be like, okay, I do want to become at-home parent and so on. So I think this is something we could analyze and like dedicate maybe another report to. If anyone would be interested to doing this with me, I would be very glad to cooperate. Thank you, Bahadur.
Very interesting perspective. Thank you very much. Any other questions, friends, dear participants?
Если разрешите,
да, пожалуйста.
Я бы хотел, тут даже не вопрос, а как и предложение о сотрудничестве, и нам понадобится помощь Андрея Стота. Значит, если вкратце, в настоящее время мы прорабатываем вопрос мобильной идентификации для оказания государственных услуг, как Джихангир Шукуров уже отметил, и помощь Андрея Стота по данному вопросу нам была бы очень важна. И не только, а в целом, коллег, мы хотели бы обсудить основные моменты, направления по этой части. Мобильная идентификация на сегодняшний день – это удобный инструмент для идентификации пользователей, и часть госуслуг в ближайшее время мы хотели бы перевести вот на идентификацию посредством мобильного устройства.
Mr. Stott, do you understand the question?
I think vaguely. I mean, I think the World Bank generally would be very interested to talk about this. We've done a lot of work on digital identification techniques in other countries. I think one of the things that is clear in responses to crisis is that the more that you've adjusted your systems and your procedures to how people now work in advance, the easier it is to leverage those. So, for instance, in the UK's response, for people who are not already registered with the government in a particular way, they have to supply details to be checked out by a US credit agency for some reason. And this has caused not only delays, but also political controversy because it has all sorts of privacy issues. So I think these days people, mobile, your mobile number, your mobile device is very much your security token. It's in some ways, it can be more secure than the average password someone picks, and it can be a way of leveraging into a number of other systems. So, thinking about how you build on mobile technology, how you get people registered on that in a secure way, and use the mobile device as a carrier for their digital identity, I think is a very promising way forward. And certainly we can go into that in a further discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stott. Are there any other questions? Коллеги, есть вопросы нашим спикерам, пожалуйста?
Если позволите.
Да, пожалуйста.
У меня есть вопрос по поводу международного рейтинга. Изменения в методике рейтинговой оценки стран, о которых презентовали. И насчет Узбекистана, может быть, есть какие-то практические предложения по поводу того, как нам улучшать систематически.
Извините, пожалуйста, я должен вас перебить. Вы можете, пожалуйста, перейти на русский канал, чтобы наши переводчики, синхронисты могли переводить это в один эфир?
Да. Я повторюсь. Я по презентации о международных рейтингах. Хотела уточнить, будет в ближайшее время меняться методика проведения рейтинга, и есть ли у Узбекистана какие-то конкретные рекомендации по тому, как систематически, устойчиво добиваться улучшения позиций в международном рейтинге. Спасибо.
Mr. Kirby, is that clear? Is the question clear?
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, there are many international rankings. So there's the um, World Economic Forum's competitive index. There's the WIPO Innovation Index. There's the UN e-government index as well. The methodology itself changes every 2 years, very slightly, because it's not the same exam every 2 years. So there are different questions and so forth. In order for Uzbekistan to move forward, the idea of benchmarking is important, but the idea of doing something that no one's doing is more important. So if you keep benchmarking against someone, you're just going to just try to catch up, but you're never going to pass them and to do something different that's no one else is doing. So for example, if Uzbekistan wants to focus a lot on blockchain technology or on the API economy or on something special on social networking that no one else is doing, that's the change. That's the change that happens. Because what the UN normally does when they develop the actual survey questions, they actually review all the sites ahead of time, the major sites, the European sites, the American site, the Korean site, the Singapore site, to see what's new out there. So they're looking for new things. And I always urge countries, which I advise, is that if you want to do well on the UN survey, you have to be original, be something different. You know, if gaming is part of your system, use gaming. So it's something that out of the ordinary. If you just keep following the same thing over and over, yes, you'll move up a little bit, but there won't be that drastic movement for 20, 25, 30 steps. It'll just be a few up and down. So to me, it's being original, be open as much as possible, and provide a lot of content. The more content you provide, the better it is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirby. Дарья, насколько это отвечает вашему вопросу? Спасибо большое. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to an end of the first session. We thank all our speakers for absolutely wonderful presentations and interesting thoughts and conclusions we are taking away. We will take 5 minutes break and then come back for even more interesting presentations of the second session. Thank you very much and see you in 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Colleagues, welcome back to the roundtable on digitalization in Uzbekistan. We're now about to begin the second session, which will be focusing on one of the most impactful crises that has hit the world, the COVID-19 pandemic. In this session, we will look at countries, including Uzbekistan, has been able to respond to this crisis from the prism of digitalization, and what have been the lessons learned so far that could be of benefit to Uzbekistan as part of its long-term recovery measures. My name is Robert Bernardo. I'm with the UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub, and it's my pleasure and honor to moderate this session. We are delighted to have in this session 6 well-known experts on digitalization, technology, and public policy to share with us their insights and experiences in exploring and applying digital solutions to this health crisis. Our panelists will speak for 10 minutes, and I hope our esteemed panelists will forgive me if I may need to remind them that their time is up. After the presentations, we will have some time for open discussions, and we look forward to your active participation. And so without further ado, let me start by calling on the first of 6 excellent presentations today. We know that the health sector has been severely impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, and it has exposed how capacity gaps have been really uninvested and have been undermined in many years. We have seen challenges not only in terms of the number and quality of health personnel, but also in terms of health infrastructure, systems, and tools. Now, how did Uzbekistan enable digital responses in healthcare? Let's hear from the Deputy Minister of Healthcare, Mr. Abdullah Azizov. Welcome, Mr. Azizov, who will be speaking on Uzbekistan's digital response to COVID-19 and healthcare. Please, Mr. Azizov.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your participation in today's call. Yeah, there has been a lot of interesting topics that people have been talking. Basically, I would like to touch upon what we have done during a pandemic that we have today, and then as we all know, this epidemic pandemic is happening all over the world. A lot of people are having a lot of challenges due to not being prepared to this pandemic, and then it's also giving the sudden impact where the number is increasing very fast, and then where countries are facing a lot of challenge. So basically, I would like to talk what we have done during this pandemic, what kind of softwares and tools we have developed to face the issue that we could have with regards to the digitalization. Just a second. First thing, we developed the website. That's a coronavirus use. This is a platform where a lot of information is gathered for people if they want to know more about coronavirus and its impact. The people can find the instructions here. They can also see the dynamics, the number of infected people, how many people has been treated well, and how many people has been died. So a lot of information gathered in this website, in this portal, and people can go and then find out what's happening if they have an interest to get to know more about coronavirus in Uzbekistan. And next thing, we also opened a call center. We have 2 different call centers. One is on a country level. This is 1003. And then we also have a regional call centers, 1105. So it was the first we initiated with 1003. This is on a country level. In the beginning, we didn't have a sudden rise in the number of infected people. You can say it was very moderate. We could handle all the questions if people had with regards to COVID-19. At some point in time in July, it was impossible to answer all the questions, and then all the regions became more active, and they started creating their call center on regional level because they know the region particularities, and then they could give a lot of information with regards to the hospitals specialized to COVID-19, or we have also sorting centers, so they started giving a lot of information locally as well. So basically this 1003 is still active, we're currently using, but the regional call center 1105 is also activated. So people can, if they have any questions with regards to hospitalization or the medicines they have to use, they can get the information through this call center. And then we also created several Telegram bots where people also find answers to their questions. There also, we created a bot where people can write their question and then they can also get an answer through Telegram bot. But of course, this gives some difficulties for some people to write it. They would prefer to talk. So many of the people, they use call center instead of Telegram bot, but we made it available if people have intention to write, so they can write their question and they can get an answer. On the other side of the Telegram, there's a people who are professionally trained and they know to answer any question related to COVID-19, not only COVID-19, but it could be also other problems where they could get an answer if they have a health issue. We also have a question, it's kind of a question and answer where they can find out if they have a coronavirus infection or not. It's just basically answering some of the questions, and then they'll be diagnosed like automatically if they have a COVID-19 or they don't have it. And then we also have the third Telegram bot. This is mainly used for the business, but this is not specifically for medical, but it's for any business activities if stopped due to quarantine. So they could ask questions and then they could get an answer from a medical center as well. We also developed the application, it's called self-safety. This self-safety, similar applications have been used in many other countries like South Korea, Singapore, Italy, Israel, France, and other countries where people are activating their mobile application. They have to activate their location as well. So when people are walking, and for example, if someone is talking to an infected person, eventually it was found later, then the person who talked to this person or the person who was close to that person and standing around 3 minutes, that person will be getting a notification in the mobile application saying that you have had a communication with a person who was detected for COVID-19. This gives an opportunity for a person to go out and to do the test, this COVID-19 test they can submit, and they can find out the result. But this application obviously can be used when it's not, when the number is not raising very high up, but it's going quite slow, you can use it. But when the number of infected people goes very fast, it's basically not possible for people to go there. It's well, basically the reason for that is we had a challenge due to PCRs, where you can take a test. We didn't have enough capacity, and then we had to stop at some point in time taking a test, but it was mainly clinical identification if the person has a infection or not. So you can say at some point in time, in the beginning it was a little bit popular, but then it stopped being popular just because they were constantly getting a lot of notification because people around them, they got infected. And then now it's not being heavily used this day, but we are planning to use it at some point in time. And there is another problem with this application is many people, they believe that they are being tracked. This is kind of, you know, confidence, you can say, or they didn't want to show that where they have been walking or where they have been appearing throughout the day, and then they also started to turn off. This kind of application is mainly useful when a lot of people are using it, but if they're not, if there's a limited of number of people, then there is not much benefit in this application. Even though this application has been developed and then some people are still using it. Then we also have this quarantine info Uz. This is This is a web portal where you can find about the people who are located in the quarantine zone. When people are traveling from other countries to Uzbekistan, they are taken to quarantine zone we have. They stay there for 10 days. So people can find information about the people who are located there through this web portal. And it's also used for registering every person who is located in which container. We have some kind of containerized solution that was also developed in China. We also use the same method. And then if the relatives are looking for their friends or relatives, so they can find it where the person is located, and then they can give a call. They can find out if the person is fine or if they need any support. So we can basically keep a communication conducted through people. We also developed a tool called Demor SSV Uz. This platform is mainly for hospitals who are treating infected people. People basically will register the patient. After registration, they're put into the room, and then it's also been registered in the system. And later they can have also daily updates about the person, what's happening with the person, and what kind of medicines is being given. And then we can also see which people are in intensive care, which people are in normal care. So it can also be found, this information. This is also used also to identify the enough capacity, if they have enough capacity today, if we find a person or if someone is giving a call to emergency. So then ambulance should know where to deliver them, because sometimes it fills up very fast, because people also deliver the person with their own car. And then we can use this system to identify if they have any enough space or where we have to drive the person. So a lot of information captured here. It's about their condition, their good or bad saturation. So a lot of information are available. And at the same time, we also have the list of every people, basically employees who are working there. They're also being registered, because the employees today who are working against COVID-19, they're being paid with higher salaries. There is a presidential decree on that. So we have a registry of all the people who are working there as well. On top of that, currently we're also developing the inventory solution in this system, where we want to do the calculation of, or forecasting, you can say, for the medicine that's required depending on the number of patients. This could also be useful to identify or to do a forecast, proper forecast. Otherwise, with papers, it's so difficult, and then sometimes hospitals are running out of medicines and there is no proper way of forecasting. So that's a tool that's going to be used. Then we also developed coronavirus test Uz. This is a platform that's used to collect the test information, and then people should be able to find the answer of their test through this platform. Basically, they can enter their passport information, and they can get the result if it's a positive or negative. Then we also created an online consultation. It's Ask Dr. Uz, where people can ask different questions and they can get an answer. This is also, they can also have a web call. They can see the person on the other side, and then they can get the consultation from the doctors. I don't know how much time I have, but basically that's what we have today. We have been also developing some other tools eventually that will be used. Today, we don't have the single platform on country level. We have made a master plan within a digitalization area. And we have over 25 different projects for coming next 2 years. We'll be quite busy with developing a lot of systems like PACS, RAS, hospital information system. And then we have to also re-engineer some of the solutions that we have for polyclinics. So there are a lot of things that are ahead of us. On top of that, the very critical thing when you are developing a huge platform, it's critical that you have a business process re-engineering process. That's what we are also initiating. We're kicking off from next week, where we have to look through all the processes that we have today. We have to optimize the processes. We have to standardize the process, and of course, then digitalization, and then you can say automation of the process should happen. So where we have to get rid of a lot of the duplicates of tasks, and then unnecessary steps. And then there are also a lot of problems when you really look into the resolutions or decrees where they are contradicting each other. So we have also a huge task around that. And on top of that, we're next 2 months, we will be spending time on working on the architecture, enterprise architecture, the business architecture as well, and then the technical architecture of our solutions. We'll be cooperating with some international companies. We're working with ADB, KfW, and then we have UNESCO is also there working with us, and then World Bank. We're starting another new topic about a master plan, not only IT, but it's also all together. What is the strategy going forward for us for next 5 years or 10 years? What do we want to see, and then how do we need to deliver this? So there are a lot of things are happening at the same time. It's very critical, as many of you mentioned, that the foundation is that we should have a IT landscape or infrastructure set up. Otherwise, we can develop fantastic solutions and softwares which will eventually not work because people, they don't have a computer, or people, they don't have an internet connection. That's where we're also spending time, and where the main focus is to make sure the IT infrastructure is in place, and later switch to the softwares and proper implementation of these softwares that we have been developing. We are not developing every single platform ourselves because there are many things that has been already invented. So there is no intention to reinvent the wheel, but instead use the experience that has been gathered globally. So we might also like purchase some of the ready application. The important thing is the source code should be with us, because there will be a lot of personal information. Many of you also mentioned about the security, the personal data, and then we have to also make sure that the information is with us, and then it should be very secure. And another thing is also what some of you have mentioned is about data. So data should be gathered, and then data should be eventually converted into information. Otherwise, it's just a beautiful talk that we have tons of data and we don't know how to use it. So that's also where we have to focus. Like we have to develop a business intelligence. And then I'm thinking, at least, or I'm hoping that in next or after 2 years, we should have enough data to work with artificial intelligence, where we can implement electronic decision-making support. For example, that has been implemented in Estonia this year. So at least it gives some kind of, 80% of the diagnostics correctly. And then another 20% that should be covered by doctors, where they have to verify if the diagnosis is correct. But that's where we are going ahead. And then what I'm hoping for is there should be other organizations or international organizations, or some of you could also join us in this game. I have created already a technical group where I have invited all international organizations, IFIs. They're also participating, like ADB, EBRD is there, and then KfW, World Bank, UNESCO, you name it. So I'm trying to gather so we can support each other, and then we can also learn from each other, because many international organizations, they have their exposure to other countries where they see the new developed tools, so we could also make use of it. I think that's what I have for today. But if you have any questions, please raise it. Then I will gladly answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Mr. Azizov, thank you so much. This is quite a very impressive range of work by the Minister of Health to respond to healthcare issues in the country in a very rapid way. Well, in this roundtable, we're talking about how Uzbekistan can learn from other countries. Hearing from you, I think other countries can certainly learn a lot from Uzbekistan as well. So yeah, very good work, very impressive work. Congratulations, Mr. Azizov.
Thank you very much.
Let us now move into the this presentation. As we know, the COVID-19 also has impacted the education sector. And in Uzbekistan, the pandemic has shut down the schools in the country, affecting more than 6 million students, who are now going into remote learning, an unprecedented phenomenon in the country. Now, of course, this has a lot of associated challenges and opportunities as well, and a number of earlier speakers have already emphasized digital divide, connectivity, and capacity issues that needed to be addressed and were exposed by the virus. And so for this particular presentation, we'll talk about how digital technologies have been introduced in education. And we have a rector from the Amity University in Tashkent who will provide us his insights on this. I would like to call on Mr. Bubur Abdullayev to provide us his insights on the education sector and COVID-19. Mr. Abdullayev, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to be the part of this event and have a chance to talk about the education sector in the IT. Thank you to my colleagues that are showing the presentation, but I'm just on my trip in one of the regions of Uzbekistan just to learn the aspects of the IT education in the regions also. So if I start with the IT education, it is impossible not to mention the Minister of ICT, because all the universities, the main 3 universities in Uzbekistan, which is the Tashkent University of Information Technologies, the main university, and the 2 international universities, one of which is Amity University, which I'm heading, are under this university and under the direct control of the Ministry of IT, not the Ministry of Higher Education, which gives us good chance to realize all the things which we are planning. And the other aspects which I want to talk about is why education in IT sphere is so important and why everybody is mentioning it, because IT is a sphere where everything is done by the people. We don't have any tools or something. some things. The main thing is ideas here. And the Uzbekistan, more than 60% of the nation in Uzbekistan is youngsters. So it is giving a good chance for us to educate the youngsters in IT sphere. So mainly during the COVID-19, the COVID-19 itself showed us that without IT education, without IT itself, nothing can be possible. And the best thing during the current time period is the online things. So the ministry already, the IT sphere in Uzbekistan already started paying so much attention to IT education from the 2019, because this year also my university, Amity University in Tashkent, also was launched. And we have launched so many good projects, which, one of which is, for example, a 1 million coders program, where we're trying to educate the people who are not covered with the universities. And also we are launching almost every week, we are launching the new IT center in the regions. These centers are mostly profiled to educate youngsters who's not covered again with the universities or higher education to IT sphere for free. So it is something unique, and all the aspects will give a good chance for us in the future to develop IT itself. And yesterday, just one of the news, I was the part of the other international conference where almost all the experts emphasized that the main sector during main thing in IT sector during this COVID-19 is education. So I was very happy to hear that, and I'm very happy that in Uzbekistan we are investing to our youngsters in IT sphere. So what was the cases, for example, in my universities during the COVID-19 problem, the quarantine period, we had, as a first university in Uzbekistan, we had launched the online education. So all the education processes were moved to online. Just after 2 days after announcing the quarantine period, Amity University in Tashkent has launched has moved all the processes to online. And as a first university, we had also made entrance exams online 100% using here we got the help from the artificial intelligence. because, as you know, the checking of the people of the attendance during the exams is not the easy thing. And we had checked so many aspects using the artificial intelligence, and this gave a good chance for our proctors to control the process. And now it is already announced that first school, which is the IT school, again under the Ministry of ICT, is preparing their online exams also. And all of these aspects is showing that we had learned a very good lesson from this COVID-19, that IT and education in this sphere is one of the main things that we should pay attention. So, and I would like to stop on some problems which we are having. Maybe I'm a part of the university which is private, but we have still some problems with the IT, with the education itself. The universities, schools, and the other education organizations which are not using their own platform. For example, lots of them are using the open source and free platforms. They're having some problems with the collecting the people and getting giving them the best quality education. And they are already coming to the solution that in the future also all the education institutions should be ready for that. And I hope that Ministry of Higher Education and the other the ministries are ready for this, because I see that lots of transformation is going on in this field. And also, I would also mention the IT Park, which is doing so much for our youngsters in the education sphere also, not only the gathering the IT companies and making so many projects. They have an IT center with their structure, and they are realizing so many projects on educating the IT specialists without the universities. And Uzbekistan is launching his own portal on IT education, and which will also cover all 1 million coders program, IT universities, schools, and all other entities on IT. I think this is the main information which I wanted to share. Sorry that I'm not prepared a little bit because of this my trip, and thanks a lot. I'm ready for all the questions which will be there. Over to you. Thank you.
Mr. Abdullayev, thank you so much. I think those are very important points. Thank you so much for raising the issues about the challenges and gaps in the education sector, but at the same time highlighting the digital innovations that the education sector has introduced to respond to the needs of the students and the youth in the country. Those are very valuable information, and I think those are very good fodder for our discussions later at the end of these sessions. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions around those. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Let me now call on Mr. Hannes Astok. As you know from Estonia, Estonia, I don't know if others here would agree with me, but I definitely see and hear from across many different platforms that Estonia is always being seen as sort of a gold standard when it comes to digitalization, because of the so many investments and lessons that Estonia has made to really create digital transformation in the country. So let us hear from Mr. Hannes Astok. Hannes is the Deputy Director of the E-Governance Academy, and Hannes has worked in many countries, worked with many governments in supporting them as part of their digital transformation journeys. So Hannes, maybe you can share with us some of these more recent lessons from Estonia as well on responding to COVID-19, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and hello for everyone. Добрый день. для всех. Я переключаю на русский, если разрешите. И сейчас я хотел вам показать эстонские опыты, как цифровые технологии помогли в стране выжить во время кризиса COVID. И я думаю, самое главное, что мы поняли вот во время этого последнего кризиса, что когда кирпич и раствор уже не работают, в смысле, что все правительственные здания были закрыты, тогда мы поняли, что действительно все наши цифровые решения успешно помогают нас жить дальше, жить и работать как будто бы в нормальном состоянии, но так какой-то мере, конечно. И я коротко представляю, что мы изучали и какие выводы с этого. Во-первых, начинаем из интернет-соединений. И интернет-соединение, конечно, когда вся страна закрылась, до какой-то степени стал проблемой. Так как люди ушли из офисов, ушли от школ, и все шли дома, и значит все домашние соединения, многие переселились из городов на деревню, так что загородные соединения, оба мобильные и проводные, стали, конечно, самым важным вопросом. И что мы поняли, что мы строили в Эстонию очень хорошую магистральную сеть, и это нас во время кризиса очень много помогло. Мы должны откровенно сказать, что все соединения последнего миля, последнего километра не работали первоначально, как мы хотели, но с помощью этого, что магистральная связь была на месте, что кабеля идут, хорошая связь идет до каждой антенны, оттуда дальше уже наши операторы связи могли починить связь, и в течение нескольких недель они действительно огромно работали, поставили много достаточных антенн и так далее. Так что в конце концов связь была нормальной и в многих сельских местностях, где он, кстати, раньше не был такой хороший. Так что в этом плане это нас очень помогло. Теперь, если мы думаем, какие навычки и умения были нужны во время кризиса, чтобы работать из дома, либо быть студентом из дома, в конце концов, телеконференции стали как-то мейнстримом. Мы много в Эстонии говорили об этом, что не надо так много физических собраний делать, можно через телеконференции более работать. И мы, конечно, в Академии электронного управления этому уже по такому привычку работаем уже лет 5, даже не больше. Но многие правительственные и бизнес-органы, конечно, для них это было как-то новость, но мы должны сказать, что они привыкли. Больше был проблем у школ и университетов, так как была проблема доступа к компьютерам из дома. И даже если мы думаем, что если для детей есть один компьютер из дома, тогда если там больше, чем один ребенок хочет участвовать в дистанционном учебе, тогда это понятно, что надо больше компьютеров. По крайней мере, для некоторых фамилий это была проблема. Конечно, соединение, о чем я уже говорил. Конечно, то, что школы не были методически готовы применять дистанционную учебу, так как учители, учительницы, администрация школ не был готов к этому. Это понятно, так как никогда такого раньше не было. Сразу, конечно, начали пользоваться очень разными платформами, там Teams, Zoom, Google Classroom, другие. Но, конечно, методики не было, так что первоначально это было очень трудно для учеников и для учителей, как с этими платформами пользоваться, как этими хорошо пользоваться, как вести уроки, как подать разные домашние задания и так далее. Так что четкой методики проведения телеуроков не было. И это дошло, конечно, до этого, что весной, в конце концов, надо было бы сдавать экзамены тоже. Так что и для этого надо было разных платформ устраивать. Но я думаю, что это был очень хороший урок. И как раз гораздо больше, чем раньше, внимания уделились инструментам про сотрудничество, обучение и методологии, как этого использовать. И в конце концов, я думаю, что самое важное, что сегодня уже наши школы, наши ученики, наши учители гораздо более готовы пользоваться этими технологиями, и они готовы и в своем дальнейшем жизни гораздо больше пользоваться такими технологиями телеконференций, и не только звонить друг другу, но и вместе работать и сделать свои планы. Насчет электронных услуг. Здесь картина не из Эстонии, но это картина из Южной Африки, где Министерство внутренних дел Южной Африки 21 мая скажет, что, к сожалению, веб-сайт министерства закрыто, так как вся страна закрыта. Конечно, такого электронного правительства нам не хочется видеть, так как наше понимание есть, что если электронное правительство, существует электронное правительство, электронные услуги, они должны работать 24 часа в день, 7 дней в неделю, несмотря на то, либо на улице пандемия или какого другого типа кризис. Так что в Эстонии мы очень хорошо этого понимаем, и что мы изучили, что самое важное, что эта инфраструктура, которую мы построили уже в течение 15 лет, это очень хорошо работало во время этого кризиса. У нас есть хороший портал, где все услуги доступны и гражданинам, и бизнесу. Есть безопасный обмен данных, есть цифровая идентификация, доступна всем. И самое главное, есть данные в цифровом виде и хорошем качестве. Так как вся эта инфраструктура работала беспрерывно во время этого кризиса и дал нам понимание, что мы можем и выжить и даже более жесткие кризисы. И здесь просто один слайд насчет эстонских электронных сервисов. По идее, все, что я уже сказал. И самое главное, что эта модель работает хорошо, и наш как-то месседж всем это такое, что не надо думать, что вот кризис пройдет, и мы можем продолжать по-старому. Надо быстро построить всю эту цифровую экосистему для каждой страны. Надо заниматься базами данными, качеством данных, и чтобы они были доступны в электронном виде для услуг, чтобы цифровой идентитет был доступен каждому человеку, несмотря на его доходы, либо на его привычки, и чтобы услуги были действительно качественные и доступные и через портал, но сегодня уже, конечно, очень важно, что через мобильный телефон для каждого жителя страны. Только таким образом можно быть готов к следующим кризисам. И мы не знаем, какой следующий кризис. Это либо пандемия, либо какой-то катастрофа, природная катастрофа, может быть, кое-что другое, но это кризис будет. И тогда нам заново надо все эти услуги и электронное правительство. И нам надо электронное правительство ежедневно, так как люди хотят получать эти услуги беспрерывно, несмотря на локацию. Им не интересует, где находится здание правительства, им не интересует, где находится правительственные фронт-офисы, они хотят получать эту услугу сейчас и здесь. Так что мы очень рады передать наш эстонский опыт и другим странам, включая, конечно, Узбекистан. У нас уже есть некоторые связи, и были некоторые группы, которые нас посетили. Так что мы очень рады продолжать это сотрудничество и поддерживать узбекский народ в этом пути, чтобы вести электронное правительство. Спасибо вам большое.
Hannes, thank you. Thank you so much. This is excellent. And you raised a number of very important points here. One is on the issue of rural-urban divide. And I think this is really where we're now seeing that the emphasis on rural development and rural digitalization is becoming more and more urgent. And there's something you mentioned. You were alluding to the human aspect of tech learning and digitalization. As you have mentioned, it has now become a family issue. Digitalization has really become a family and social issue. And it's not only for those involved in the tech industry. Everybody, including children, is affected. Here in my house, I can see it too. Whenever there's internet disruptions, you can see everybody panicking already. And I'm sure it is in your own households as well. It's happening similarly. And then more importantly, the role of digitalization in enhancing resilience of societies. I think that is a very important aspect that we also need to consider going forward. Thank you so much, Hannes. Very good presentations and insights as usual. Thank you. Let us now go to the UK and learn from the experience of the UK Government Digital Service. As you may be aware, the UK Government Digital Service is the leading digital transformation agency in the country, and its role is basically is helping to advance the social contract through digital transformation by looking at enhancing people's interaction with the government. I would like to call on Ms. Jessica McEvoy, the Deputy Director for National, International and Research Team of the UK GDS, to share with us their experiences as well. Over to you, please, Ms. McEvoy.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to talk today. I'm Jess McEvoy. I'm Deputy Director for International at GDS in the UK. That's my day job, but also recently I've been supporting some of our digital COVID work. Digital government has been and continues to be central to the global response to COVID-19. Governments need to communicate critical information clearly, quickly, and consistently to citizens, as well as ensure that all citizens, including the most vulnerable, have access to the services that they need. One key lesson that I want people to go away with is that the UK's digital response to COVID-19 was a result of 10 years of investment in people, governance, and technology. The ability to respond quickly and effectively as a result was a result of the existing digital leadership that we already had and the processes that were already established prior to COVID-19. So this is Government Digital Service in the UK. It's our central digital agency. We're part of Cabinet Office and we lead the government's digital function. We help departments build and support services that are digital by default and focused around user needs. There are roughly 800 of us, and we're made up of designers, developers, user researchers, technical architects, product managers, and more. And as I mentioned, I lead the international team, and we work globally on issues of digital government, but I'll mention that again at the end. I've been at GDS since 2013, and prior to this, I built and ran the UK's digital identity program, Verify. So moving to our COVID-19 digital work, the role of digital and government's coronavirus response was and remains critical. As the pandemic took away people's ability to communicate in person, digital tools, services, and ways of working came to the fore. Technology has been central to our government's response, and I want to talk about 4 ways digital teams across government and the public sector stepped up to meet the crisis head on. New services and solutions were needed for unprecedented situations. They had to be built rapidly, securely, and able to stand up to record traffic from day one. As you know, this was a high profile, high pressure situation, and one where it was important for digital products to deliver the goods at the point of need while also being adaptable as policy evolved. We built over 150 new digital services created in a matter of months and sometimes days and hours by the UK government across all departments, and the majority of them used our gov.uk platform. I'll give a couple of examples on services that we built. There's a lot of possible services I could have picked out, you know, from potentially our health app or the digital work that we've been doing to build sequencing capacity to map and publicly share the COVID genomes to help us understand the virus. But the example I'm going to cover is this one, the Vulnerable People Service, and that's because I built it. So it's a vanity thing. It's a collaboration across the public and private sector to get vital support to those people who are most at risk. The service has been used by millions of people, millions of times, and it enabled the delivery of millions of boxes of food boxes and medical supplies to people who were deemed to be too at risk to leave their house during lockdown. The Vulnerable People Service helped millions of people in need during this time and taught us a huge amount about how we can do personalized services that we want to then apply to our future work. One interesting thing about this service is I got a phone call about this on Friday and it was live and running on Monday. It involved us building a central data exchange architecture over the weekend. And we also built an interactive voice recognition function, which doesn't sound very digital, but it was a way to allow people to phone in and request support from government, which we would then convert with our technology into digital support services and create records for them. It was a huge cross-government effort. It involved subnational levels of government, local, national levels of government, private sector, and our health service. Another example that I'll touch on is the business support tool that we built. Again, built very, very quickly in 4 days. And it was developed to create a bridge between the government and lots of private sector organizations who wanted to offer their support to the government to help handle the crisis response. It recruited 40,000 offers of support from private sector into government and contributed to countless collaborations that otherwise wouldn't have been able to exist. Now I want to cover the central role that gov.uk played and is still playing. It's our single domain, and it was the centerpiece of the UK's COVID response. We have delivered an extensive program of activity to host and consolidate all government guidance tools and live streams of press conferences, tailoring content as the government response evolved over time, including supporting the shift in our government's messaging from stay at home, it's lockdown, to you're allowed to go out and stay alert. We've leveraged the data gathered through gov.uk to generate new insights to improve our overarching content and services and provide input into the government's policy making through a weekly insights note. We've maintained a secure, resilient platform throughout this period of record demand. In a single week in March, I think it peaked at about 158 million page views on this page that you can see right now, confirming its status once more as a single source of trusted government information for services, and businesses and citizens. Next, I'll just cover our increased use of our common components. Common components are the building blocks of our digital services. They were made and are maintained by GDS to solve common problems like taking payments, sending notifications, or proving identity. These tools were already in use across the public sector, but coronavirus has meant that demand for them has increased hugely. For example, this is Notify. It lets teams send out emails, text messages, or letters cheaply and easily and securely, and it's become central to our coronavirus communications and has seen a 700% increase in demand. Organizations across the public sector have used it to keep in touch with people for critical messaging, including our health service, our government, local authorities, to name just a few. And having an off-the-shelf way to do this and combine it with our gov.uk design system has meant that powerful services could be created quickly. And one of the key things about Notify is it doesn't require any technical knowledge in order to be able to send it. So any registered and authorized person in government can set up an account and then be emailing out to their users within hours of having decided that they need to. So the increases sort of increased from about 150 notifications going out a day to around 8.6 million a day. And I think it sent its billionth message a couple of months ago. We've also seen demand increase for digital identity. So Gov.uk Verify, which lets people prove who they are fully digitally online, has seen a 900% increase in demand, which is due in large part to citizens' need to access social care, and digital identity being one of the ways that we can make sure that the right people are getting the right money. We've been working with private sector to kind of scale up the system that sits behind it so that they could deal with that increased traffic during this period. And we were able to help some of those worst affected by coronavirus to get the essential services and support that they needed when it mattered most. As discussed, like GDS leads the digital data and technology profession in government, and this is made up of 18,000 people working across all the departments, and these skills were suddenly in very high demand. Coronavirus demanded a joined up response from the public sector. People from all sorts of organisations wanted to help the government response and needed a way to do so. We got lots of goodwill offers from private sector that's related to the business support tool that I described earlier, and we were effectively able to divert those offers of support across government to the surged areas that were highest priority for the government. This is where we really saw the value of having a central digital function where we could lead from the front and effectively coordinate efforts from within and outside government. The function rapidly deployed digital expertise to where it needed to be. We had hundreds of specialists placed across government roles. We were able to build on the existing models that we already have to provide support at pace. We also we set up a central working group so that government departments and devolved administrations had a single forum to kind of triage risks and issues that were being exacerbated by the crisis. We were monitoring the digital needs across government. This is an old snapshot of one of the dashboards that we created to track all the digital work that was happening across the ecosystem at the time. And like many others, we had to switch to remote working, fully remote working, basically overnight. And a lot of the government was already able to do this because they were able to work remotely prior to COVID-19. But we had to do a huge amount of intervention to do triage into interoperability. So individual departments could go away and they had the technology they needed in order to be able to access their internal systems at home. But that department working smoothly with another department was much more complicated. So interoperability across the different government systems was much more complex. And so what lessons have we learned? There's still a lot to crystallize, but here are our evolving thoughts. The decision to put the digital function in the center has allowed it to break down barriers between departments and enable collaboration. On number two, we've also found one of the most transformative elements of digital government is the changes in governance, capability, and culture. And this has been a strong enabler for our COVID response, stronger than technology. On number three, clear, well-organized design and content improves the chance that people will be able to follow health guidance and live safely. And user research is essential to this process. It's taken us over a decade to get to the point where this is fully embedded across government. And it's even more important in a crisis than it is in normal times. Number four, the success of our digital response to COVID-19 has been mainly down to the UK's solid digital foundations and the existing digital services, standards and skills and policies. You can't wait for a crisis to prepare. And on number five, by having invested in digital capability, the UK government was able to quickly spin up new interdisciplinary teams and manage their resourcing to deliver new services. Thanks very much. I better leave it there.
Ms. McEvoy, thank you so much. There's one thing that you kept repeating, and I want to highlight that, and that is the role of the private sector. And I think this is where it becomes really imperative as we move into long-term recovery now for COVID, that the government provides that enabling environment, not only to bring in the private sector, but to bring the other stakeholders as equal partners in trying to solve these challenges that are of common importance to everybody. And also the importance of the last mile delivery, looking at the vulnerable, those at risk. That's something, of course, that the UN is very much engaged in as well, to make sure that that no one is left behind. Which reminds me of what Robert Opp was mentioning earlier also about making sure that digital development is intentionally inclusive, because that's also very important to make sure that indeed, that the digital transformation that we are working on does not contribute to more inequalities. I like the way you focused on mentioned user-centered design and investment in digital capability. Also because it's a very good segue to our next speaker from Singapore. So thank you so much, Ms. Markevoy, for that excellent sharing. Certainly lots of lessons learned from the UK GDS on this. Thank you again.
Thank you. So
I have mentioned Singapore. As you all know, Singapore has been known as one of the countries that has successfully responded to and anticipated the COVID crisis early on. In the last several months, we have seen how the Singapore government has anchored its COVID response on digitalization and experimentation, enabling very agile responses in very quick period of time. Let us hear from Professor Eduardo Araral. Ed is a professor from the National University of Singapore, the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And Ed has been studying, analyzing how governments have responded to COVID. So Ed will certainly be interested to hear from your experiences and insights from Singapore. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Bob. Dobre Jin. So it's been a long day for you all, so I will make my presentation quick and concise, and I'll just deliver a few key messages. The first message that I would like to convey today that Bob has said is that Singapore has used digital technology to manage the COVID-19 in all its dimensions. From prevention to tracing to testing to treatment, from use of GPS tagging to QR codes to trace together tokens available to the rest of the population, to technologies of testing and AI drug discovery, and coupled with common sense governance mechanisms. And as a result of the use of these digital technologies built up over time and common sense governance mechanisms, I just read in the Reuters news report today that Singapore has the lowest case fatality ratio in the world, 0.005. That's 27 fatalities. And although you would say Singapore is only a small city-state, indeed, but it's also the most congested city-state because of the Singapore is very, very small, and the population density is the highest in the world. The fact that Singapore survived this COVID-19 despite our very high density in public housing is testament to the use of technology and the governance mechanisms that the government has put in place. The second message I'd like to convey is, and this is not just unique to Singapore, but this lesson is can be drawn from the experience of Southeast Asian countries, digital transformation. So Southeast Asia has 10 countries, and you might be familiar with Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines. Southeast Asia is a vibrant regional hub with 600 million people. Singapore is the commercial hub of Southeast Asia. The key to the digital transformation of the region basically lies in infrastructure development, especially on international connectivity. This is the first and foremost. Without international connectivity, there's no point of talking about any of the solutions downstream. So get the international connectivity fixed first, and then second, followed by the quality of broadband, and make sure that it is highly, highly affordable to the rest of the population. Of course, Singapore is very small compared to Uzbekistan, but we're also dealing with big countries like Myanmar, who in 2012, basically they have no telecoms. But today, if you go to Myanmar in 2012, the cost of a SIM card is $2,500 US. After they opened up, after they invited 3 international telco companies, Today, the cost of a SIM card in Myanmar is $2.50. And they have also solved the problem of rural connectivity. So I think the experience of Myanmar offers some useful lessons for other countries in the region. Of course, after broadband, you need to put up the auxiliary infrastructure like data centers, keeping energy costs down. And the question is, where do you get the money to build all of this? You can go to the World Bank or to the Asian Development Bank, or you can also mobilize a public-private partnership. And the question is, what will be the role of government in relation to the private sector in investing in all of this expensive infrastructure? If you look at the markets, the broadband market in Southeast Asia, one of the things you would notice that would stand out really, even for a very small country like Singapore, we have 4 telcos. We have 4 internet providers. In other countries, they have at least 3. In other territories like Vietnam, Malaysia, they have 5 operators. I noticed in Uzbekistan, you still have only 1 operator at the moment. But I bet that once you unleash the private sector and you have competition in the broadband market, I think services would, improvement in services will follow. And you might wonder, what is the secret sauce in the procurement or in the award of international competitive bidding for telco bidding? If I may summarize it in 2 words, it's in 2 phrases. First is the use of high level of committed service plus performance bond as the procurement criteria. In practice, that means the highest level of committed service is you award the service to the company that offers the highest service in terms of broadband, access, price, connectivity, latency, and all of the stuff. And then you require that company to put up a performance bond in order to deliver on that promise. And this formula has been used effectively in all markets in Southeast Asia. That's why the market is quite competitive, and people have affordable access to broadband services. The second lesson is about talent development. You can have all the infrastructure, but if you don't have the software, the people behind the infrastructure to do the programming and all the stuff, because government cannot be doing all the jobs by itself. Government is so busy with many things. You really need to rely on many talent, the private sector. In Vietnam, they have this 100 expats program, where the most talented experts and scientists, Vietnamese scientists from all over the world, are invited to help the government solve the problems. And for a country like Uzbekistan, where you have a diaspora of many talents all over the world, then maybe Vietnam, the Vietnamese example, offers one case. A similar program is in China, that 1,000 Talents program, the Turtle program of China, where Chinese experts throughout the world are invited to become affiliates in Chinese universities, and then they could get the dual. I don't know if they have dual citizenship, but they are targeted by the government to return back and work in programs in China. In Singapore, we have a very small talent pool, only 5.7 million population, but the local population is only 3.2 million. So we rely on what we call talent ecosystem development. That means all kinds of talent from the young to high school to professionals to recruiting migrants to recruiting foreign talent. For example, Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, is now a Singapore citizen. The co-founder of Facebook, Edward Severin, is now a Singapore citizen, and many others. So this is an open secret. Singapore is able to compete in the big league on AI and digital transformation because of its progressive immigration and talent development program. Last but not the least is on policy development. You can have all the infrastructure, you can have the talent, but if the policies and the rules are not clear, then investors will not come. With all this infrastructure, with all this talent, Singapore is now fast becoming a hub for Chinese tech companies moving out of the US and diversifying out of China. ByteDance, the founder of TikTok, is moving their operations here. Facebook had their own data center here. Google the same. Microsoft the same. Tencent and Alibaba had also moved their operations here. The secret to that we have a formula in Singapore called get the big fish and the small fish will come. But the big fish will only come if you have the infrastructure and the talent and predictable policies. And so Singapore has invested in developing the policies, privacy, cybersecurity, data governance, benchmarking, taxation, and policies. So now Singapore is benefiting from these investments in the last 10 years. So it's now the investors are now coming in and then talent is coming in. And as a result, if you have this talent, investments, and people, then if you have a problem like COVID-19, you can quickly respond to it. So Bob, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Ed, thank you so much. Extremely insightful. It's really very interesting to hear how Singapore has responded to the crisis, building on long years of investment on digitalization and capability building. I like the way you highlighted the role of digital governance. I think this is really something that many countries are still struggling, trying to understand how do we make use of public policy and the means that the government has to really see how they can improve and advance digitalization in a very transparent, accountable, and responsive way, and address the needs of the public. One thing you also mentioned is the importance of data and data centers. And I think a number of other presenters have mentioned that as well. And we all know that without strong data, we'll not be able to move, no matter how much we would aspire to them, we'll not be able to move quickly into AI or robotics or virtual reality. And that's something I think that really needs to be further discussed and analyzed in terms of how we support data digitalization as well. So thank you so much, Ed. Lots of insights there too from you and from Singapore. Let's now go to the last, but of course not the least presentation. We have heard a number of speakers talk about the role of digital infrastructure and that we cannot emphasize it because of its implications to digital divide. We have seen how COVID has also seriously exposed the inequalities in many countries. And this is where digital infrastructure is one of the basics of digital transformation becomes even more important. Let's hear now from the World Bank's lead digital development specialist, Mr. Doyle Gallegos, to hear some insights with regard to the critical role of digital infrastructure in addressing COVID-19. Mr. Gallegos, please, over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I know it's been a long day for you, or at least most of the day. And I join you from Washington, D.C. I'm with the World Bank. I am global lead for our Broadband Access for All Global Solutions Group. And what that means is my charge in life is to assist our client countries connect the unconnected. We see it as our ultimate challenge. Most of my time has been spent in Africa, where we have huge challenges, but COVID really showed us that this is a problem everywhere, and not just in rural remote, but also in peri-urban areas. The large big cities, we saw huge swaths of neighborhoods that were unconnected. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen though.
Okay, let me change it to a slideshow. I'll do this quite quickly. I know we're running behind. I can't guarantee I'll make up the time, but I'll go quickly through this. And just so you can focus on my presentation, I'll switch off my camera. Okay, so as mentioned, you've heard today that COVID was really a big impact to all sectors, education, health. We know that networks basically were taxed to the highest levels they've seen in traffic and congestion. Luckily, we had no network crashes that I'm aware of. And that's because of the architecture of the internet. It's a distributed architecture. We now have content distribution services and caching globally. We have data centers now regionally and globally. The good news, the internet was resilient and did not crash, but it was pushed to the limit. And we saw great innovations. Singapore just shared with us how technology could really be used for tracing, for tracking, and AI to help us find a vaccine. So one thing came very clear, that we had very positive, but we had also very negative impacts. We also know that cyber attacks have increased significantly. In some cases, in some sectors, over 150%. So yeah, there's the good and there is the bad. So how do we respond? Government and industry came together very, very quickly. It took a crisis for us to really move quickly. And one thing good about the crisis is it showed us how quickly we could put in place regulation, temporary regulation, be it temporary policies, to really help make the network resilient. New spectrum was released, new pricing plans, new zero rating plans to maintain affordability, a no cancellation policy. We supported operators in their deficits. We tried to reduce the regulatory burden of fees on a temporary basis. This was all to keep it as resilient and affordable as possible. And of course, at the end of the day, what we wanted to do was maintain that services were sustainable and the continuity of the very critical services, healthcare, public health information, COVID tracing, make sure payments could be made to those who in need of transfers. This all came to very, very quickly. An example of that is on April 1st, working together with the World Bank, the ITU, the GSMA, and WEF, we came together and we called a World Roundtable. Some of you were involved, where we said, this is a call to action. And we set 5 objectives, basically to try to weather and get us through the crisis. And the points I'm showing here with you were part of those objectives. And luckily, we're not there yet. But through this collaboration, we were able to withstand, I think, a very, very much more disastrous situation. So if we showed, the COVID showed that the internet is so vital. We know the economic benefits. We've talked about that for years. We know it's vital and how for our health care, our economic sustainability. So the question is, why are so many people still unconnected? And the problem is the problem is that on the supply side, we see low network coverage. Quality is bad in some places. We have high operating costs. There are barriers to market entry. There's lack of competition, high operating costs. This is all the supply barriers. On the other hand, we see demand is suppressed because of high prices, both services and devices. Customers with low monthly incomes can't afford the service. Some without the skills or understanding of how to benefit from or effectively use the internet, and many without access to relevant applications and language content. So what do we do about it? Well, first of all, let's define what the foundation is. The foundation is infrastructure. Singapore mentioned it, and it's clear. If you don't have the foundation, the mother of foundations, we call this, you have to look at the whole value chain for developing content all the way through delivering bandwidth to the end user. Why do we do this? It's because you can see there are different levels of players, there are different levels of competition, there's different levels of technologies deployed, whether at the first mile or last mile, and the solutions will be different. But at the end of the day, no matter where we are in the value chain, we are striving for meaningful internet access. The ITU, as well as the A4I, are pushing a new concept. It's not just about being connected, but it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be available. It's got to be reliable, affordable for all. It's got to be safe, of course, and not static, because new technologies are being introduced every day. We have to be in a position to bring them on. And of course, we have to have a reason to be on the internet and purpose. So what's it going to cost us to use a universal service, if you will, level of connectivity? We led a working group of the UN Broadband Commission last year. We called it the Africa Moonshot. We were asked, what's it going to take to provide universal service to Africa, all Africa, within the next, well, by 2030? So we did the modeling, we did the analysis, and it turned out that it was going to cost approximately $100 billion, $97 billion to put universal service access in place. But it's not just about connectivity. We said we cannot provide just connectivity. It's got to be skills, it's got to be policy, regulation, and it's got to be local content. So that price tag includes investment in all of those areas. And so based on that work last year, the ITU and A4I said, let's look at the global view. So they're coming out now, tomorrow, they're issuing a report. I'm giving you a sneak peek here of what it's going to cost globally. Approximately $430 billion is the estimate right now to bring people to a universal service that is safe, reliable, and meaningful. You can see Europe and Central Asia is approximately on the low end, relatively low end, 33 billion. South Asia, approximately 135 billion. So how is this all going to come together? So it has to be through sector reforms and through unlocking private investments. How do you lock investments? Well, there are many aspects to increasing investments, but fundamentally private capital needs to be mobilized. It's what we call our PCM. Operating capital risk need to be addressed. They need to be de-risked, the capital. And strategic alliances between government and private operators need to be created through PPPs that are equitable for everyone. And governments it's not just a private sector. Governments play a critical role by enacting the policies and regulations necessary to de-risk both operations and capital investments. Policy and regulations need to be updated to keep up with technology advances and new and innovative operating models, and they must be predictable, transparent, and fair to all, operators and customers alike. Many of our client countries, for instance, have not updated their telecommunications laws in years. We did a study last year, this is a picture of it, showing basically a case study of 70 cases globally of lessons learned of innovative business models, those that worked and did not work. So let's talk about our biggest challenge, what we call rural remote. We think that the government, the private sector can really go in most markets to basically 80 to 90% of the population through reforms and through assistance, incentives. So how do we get to the next 10%, the next 15 to 10%? Well, we have to be more creative. Our current approaches are not working. Yes, we've done some good things. We have done rural coverage. We've used USF, some of them with mixed results. But where do we need to go? We need to go to new incentive-based private sector incentives, where we provide benefits like spectrum, free spectrum in certain rural areas, tax holidays, free rights of way, using the assets of the government as contributions in kind. We have to look at bundled solutions. I call it the pod. We're looking at a bundled solution of energy, financial services, and even water treatment we're testing. Subsidies have to be competitive. USFs have to be repurposed so that they meet all the needs of the different populations, whether you're in rural or whether you're in peri-urban areas. The needs are different. And of course, demand side programs. Device affordability is one of the biggest barriers, and we're testing new programs to enable guarantees from the government to enable those who cannot afford devices. So is technology going to solve our problems? Probably not. There are some great technologies, many of them still in beta testing, but some of them now commercial or on the verge of being commercial. But while we have a gap in investment and coverage and quality, we do not have a gap in innovation. It's there. And we believe that within the next 5 to 10 years, Many of these innovations will help solve the basic connectivity problem. Here's the problem. Many of these innovations right now cannot come in and provide their service with our legacy regulation and policy the way it is. We had a crisis in Peru where we have flooding and landslides, and Google Loon wanted to come in. They said they could be in with 24 hours. We could not get them in because the overflight regulations were not in place to allow them to do that. So we have to be more agile in the regulation of policy to bring these innovations in, even on a pioneer or experimental basis, to prove the concept. And if it rolls out, then we can make them commercial. So there's the other hidden asset, I would say, the asset that the governments have. The governments have the opportunity. Many of them are state-owned utilities. Many of them have fiber, dark fiber that's not lit, fiber that needs to be upgraded. They have rights of way, they have rooftops, they have buildings. This could all be enabled working together with private sector to use these hidden assets to lower the cost of broadband to the end user. And now that we're talking about 5G, seeing 5G deployments, this becomes even more of a necessity to make these hidden assets, monetize them if need be, or give them away for free so that we can promote new technologies. Now, what's the other tool, the other arrow in our quiver to say? That is stimulus packages. We saw during the financial crisis several stimulus package for shovel-ready type investments to come in and help stimulate not only the development of broadband, but also to put in place jobs and jumpstart the economies. We're seeing that again today. We have some great examples. I'm showing you just three here. South Korea's New Deal, China's recovery stimulus package, connecting the Europe facility. We're seeing them all over. The US has its own. But the point is the government can do a lot in conjunction with the private sector to jumpstart a lot of this and leapfrog to a lot of new technologies that the COVID crisis has pushed us now but not only to address and respond to, but prepare for the next one. And I'll stop here and take any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Gallegos, thank you so much. Wow, that was a short presentation, but you wove in so many different dimensions of digitalization that I talked about. Not only talked about digital infrastructure, you talked about public finance management, we talked about unlocking market mechanisms, energy sources, agile policies, investment packages for digital stimulus. And I think this is really important because all of these are really important, really needed to make sure that as we advance discussions on digital transformation, we cannot look at it from just one prism, but look at it from a whole of government approach and how we can really leverage these different partnerships and resources that are available out there to come and address this common direction, or push this common direction and vision that we all have. A lot of things to absorb there. Thank you. That was really very insightful as well, Mr. Gallegos.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let me now, I know we have run out of time, or we're running out of time, but maybe we have a couple of, we can give the space for a couple of feedback or questions if there are any urgent insights or questions out there. Anyone? Please feel free to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, or just unmute yourself and ask a particular panelist if you have any question, please.
Yeah, can I have a question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Ruzana from WHO Country Office in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have a question for Deputy Minister of Health, Mr. Azizov. So we know that in the beginning of epidemic, Uzbekistan was actively doing active contact tracing. I'm wondering whether this is still happening in Tashkent and particularly in regions. And second question, whether or not you're using or planning to use any digital tool for active contact tracing. I know you've talked about a little bit safety, but you also mentioned that the coverage of this tool is pretty low. Thank you very much.
Mr. Azizov, if I may have your permission, maybe we can take one or two more questions, and then we'll allow.
Sure, please go ahead.
Thank you. Anyone else? questions, feedback?
Daria Abdalimova, and I have several questions, and having this good opportunity to communicate with international colleagues, I would like to ask a professor from Singapore. Let me continue in Russia. Как вы думаете, как вы думаете, все-таки стоит обратить внимание на принятие решений с точки зрения IT, на сиюминутные решения, или все-таки сосредоточиться на стратегическом планировании и реализовывать поэтапное в дальнейшем внедрение информационных технологий? Спасибо. И второй вопрос к правительственному сектору. Как вы оцениваете проделанную работу? Уже мы год как находимся в состоянии пандемии. Вот. И на что стоит обратить внимание с точки зрения привлечения инвестиций, о которых говорили в последней презентации, на какие именно проекты возможно? Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Daria. Maybe we'll have space for one more before we ask our panelists to respond. Okay. All right. If not, let's, Mr. Azizov, there was a question to you on contact tracing, please.
Thank you, Rosanna, for your question. Yeah, in the beginning, we were tracing it. In the beginning, it was easy because we had only 4 or 5 infected people per day. And what we were trying to do is we're trying to find the first contact and second contact and find all the relationship through different, from different sources. At that time, it was possible to cover and to even close some of the legal entities or organizations due to quarantine, and then we sent home people and they were working from home. So we basically tried to stop the epidemic. But what happened when we start having like 600, 700 people per infection per day, it became a huge web. You know, it was reaching up to 50,000 if you start counting every people around the first contact and the second contact. So it was impossible to do that anymore. It didn't make any sense to take or to close the organizations due to quarantine or due to connectivity with the person who is infected. And then we stopped doing that. It didn't make much sense. But instead, what we tried to do is like, you know, like other countries, we asked people again to keep the distance. And then if the person is first contact, they were going and taking a test, a lab test, and trying to find out if they have been infected or not. But we didn't trace. And then when we rolled out the solution of self-safety, in the beginning it was good, it was over 200,000 people actually downloaded. But then at some point in time, there were a lot of questions coming from different people that they have been tracked and traced. So some kind of government is following up them. So there were the bad rumors started, you know, around. People misunderstood the concept. And some people, they stopped using it. And at the same time, self-safety works also with the Bluetooth, and it should be turned on, and it consumes a lot of energy of the battery energy of mobile phone. People started switching it off. So then again, when we had a pike, then again, it gave a lot of trouble where people were receiving messages. But this message, to be honest, is a bit late because you have already been in contact with the person. The only thing you could do is just you have to go and take a test, but we didn't have enough capacity to take tests. So people were less motivated because even if I get a notification, so what is the option I have? I don't have any option. I cannot go and take a test because it's fully occupied by organizations or by people who are really infected. And then that's why they have been down prioritized. So it was making also this application a little bit inappropriate. But there is an idea that we want to enhance the solution where we want to make people, for example, if the person is infected, then we're getting the address and we highlight this region that there is a person who is infected. We are not specifying the person's name or it's not disclosed. then at least this would be a trigger for people who are walking around and they can see the region. Oh, this is a red zone. Maybe I have to reconsider if I want to go. But if I want to go, then I have to be very careful that I'm in the right spot. But maybe I have to keep the distance and keep myself clean and don't touch things around. So that's the idea we want to do. But this is also needs some acceptance from internal affairs. This is the part we are sticking now, but if they agree that we can disclose the information about the location where a person is living, and actually we have also home quarantine people. If you're allowed to do that, then I think again it will be useful for some people to at least find out the regions where they are allowed to go or where they want to go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Azizov, for that response. We have one question to Ed on Singapore. Should we focus on decision making to address immediate challenges or more phased or implementation with regard to long-term recovery from COVID?
Right, thank you. Yes, I've listened to the presentation of MICT, and I think Uzbekistan is on the right track to achieve these ambitious targets. It will take time to build the international connectivity, but I understand from the World Bank there's already some projects and investments for Central Asia, South Asia connectivity. So that is already underway. But I guess the most challenging part now, as I have presented in the case of Southeast Asia, how do you promote competition in the broadband market in Uzbekistan, like what we have here in Southeast Asia, where we have 3 to 5 players and competitors? That's probably the most important, I think. And the second one, of course, would be the associated policies that I mentioned: cybersecurity, talent development or talent recruitment, all of the stuff, in order to get the confidence of foreign investors to come to Tashkent, because Tashkent is out of the way, and they would have to, Tashkent has to compete with many other countries for investments. So Tashkent has to make itself very attractive to foreign investments and talent as well. So the short answer is it's in the infrastructure competition as well as the ecosystem development. That's my short answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed. I'm afraid we have run out of time. We have a couple more questions or points that are being raised, but rest assured, this is just the beginning of a conversation. We'll continue to engage with everybody here. I would suggest that for those who have some other suggestions, questions, or feedback, please feed them into the chat box. We'll take note of them, and we'll definitely communicate with you the responses to those questions or sharing. Thank you very much for your active participation in the session.
Я считаю, неправильно оставлять их без ответа. Я бы мог буквально одним предложением ответить, какая работа по этой части проводится. Особенно хочу отметить, что этот ответ сразу ответит на 2 вопроса, как и Дарье, так и Эдуарду. Уважаемые коллеги, огромное спасибо за данные вопросы. Мы прекрасно понимаем важность этих вопросов. И на вопрос, на что стоит обратить внимание с точки зрения привлечения инвестиций, я скажу следующее. Это открытость, прозрачность и равные условия для всех участников рынка. Вот это то направление, на котором мы сейчас работаем. Как вам известно, сейчас прорабатывается правительственное решение о минимизации количества лицензий. Хотел бы Эдуарду отдельно отметить, что на сегодняшний день у нас зарегистрировано 41 оператора широкополосного доступа. И, к сожалению, только 2 оператора, которые обладают возможностью пропуска международного трафика. Но в настоящее время большая работа проводится по демонополизации секторов экономики, в том числе телекоммуникационной части. Поэтому в ближайшее время мы сейчас работаем над этим процессом. И, как я уже сказал, открытость, прозрачность и равные условия для всех участников рынка, они будут достигнуты по всем направлениям. Спасибо.
Thank you very much for that very brief but very targeted response to that question. That was very helpful. With your permission, let us now then proceed to the summary and closing of these roundtable. We had a very good opportunity to hear from experts, global experts, that are really so much engaged, not only on digitalization, but seeing how they can really respond to sustainable development challenges in general, and more particularly to address COVID-19 pandemic challenges and its impact on society. Let me then call on Ms. Matilda Dimovska, the representative of UNDP Uzbekistan, and again, Mr. Pekos Oleg Andreevich, the first Deputy Minister for Development of the Information Technologies and Communications, to share with us their closing thoughts. Thank you. Matilda, over to you first.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Pekos will close it as well, but let me reflect from UNDP point of view. I think it was just an excellent discussion, very rich. I think I am sorry that we did not factor enough time to reflect on the rich information that we had. So that is something to follow up on. That was for me very important. I think we started at the beginning with saying that we hope this not to be one-off event, but just a beginning for what we wish to be a systemic and regional regular dialogue on digital transformation. I think the richness confirmed that there is a huge scope to continue the discussion on this topic. And I think I will be consulting the ministry and others about how we structure it in the future so that we regularize this type of exchange in a similar or different format, but probably that we zoom in some of the key issues. Now, the presentations and the contacts of the presenters are already shared, I think, here, but we will follow up with sharing that the access to the drive to everyone, because some people left, so that we all have it, and then that you have everyone has an opportunity still to continue exchanging with us on the topic. As I've said, we will aim to organize a special session for youth to gather their inputs, their ideas, their views on the situation and where it can, on the digitalization in Uzbekistan and where it can move and how they can contribute to it. We aim to prepare a report out of the analysis that came today, and then to come with some number of important critical recommendations, some of the questions that have been raised, in fact. So, and that's to guide us for the future work. And of course, we are open to any other ideas. Please do feel free to approach UNDP or any of other organizers for any ideas. Myself, I will be, as UNDP also, we will follow up with most of the speakers, but also other participants. It was very inspiring, and I have many ideas, or at least interest to meet some of the colleagues, those that spoke, and also with the UN colleagues, for example, with the colleagues from WHO, who are, as I know, eager to support the health information system and so on. So let me say big thanks to the ministry and to the colleagues from the World Bank, but first and foremost to everyone that contributed to such a rich discussion. Rahmat, Kata Rahmat, Mr. Pekos, over to you.
Огромное спасибо, госпожа Матильда Димовска. Уважаемые коллеги, благодарю всех участников встречи, в особенности сотрудников представительства ПРООН и Всемирного банка. Как госпожа Матильда Димовская отметила, необходимо на регулярной основе проводить совместные встречи, которые позволяют задавать верный вектор развития цифровой экономики. Думаю, с уверенностью можно сказать, что качественная реализация намеченных целей по увеличению уровня цифровизации в социально-экономической сфере позволит в разы улучшить качество жизни граждан и гостей страны в этот непростой период пандемии. Как несколько участников уже сегодня отмечали, был долгий день, но я не соглашусь с этим высказыванием, потому что для меня встреча прошла на одном дыхании. Это показалось очень короткой и приятной к обсуждению, и все вопросы, которые поднимались, они были очень важны. И нельзя не отметить, что до конца встречи у нас присутствует 82 участника сейчас. В самом начале это было порядка 130-140 участников, и это очень важно. Много получили хороших отзывов, много хороших советов. Огромное спасибо за совместную организацию, за качественно проведенную работу. Всего хорошего.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pecos. Matilda, congratulations to the Ministry of Information Technologies and Communication, UNDP, and the World Bank for this very important roundtable discussion. Thank you to everybody for participating. We look forward to further working with you going forward on this very important topic. Thank you and have a good day. Have a good evening.
Rahmat.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.